I usually don't recommend my classes, but this one is a good one. The Monday class called The Fourth Download is really worth listening to. And I hope you listen and get inspired. The reason I'm giving this class is Monday when I'm sorry, just one second, I want to shut my phone. That on Monday when I was preparing, when I was thinking about that other class and wasn't sure and I was looking for some things to support it, I came across something by divine providence, a magnificent piece of Zohar with an outstanding explanation from a great Kabbalist. And it excited me. When I get excited, I love to share. So let's do this. It's going to take a couple of hours. So fasten your seatbelts. It's a fascinating passage of the Zohar. It's an incredible story. And then it has an incredible commentary, mind-dazzling, mind-blowing commentary by the great Kabbalist, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's father, of Levi Yitzchak Schneerson, who I love learning his Torah. We usually don't learn it on a regular basis, but from time to time, when, for whatever reason, I come across it and I study it and I get excited and I want to share it. So we've done it in the past, and this is one, he never, ever disappoints, the Rebbe's father. So let me say this is an advanced class. I'm not going to teach this like I'm teaching a mimer. I'm very, very much going to try to really speed through this, and because it's not so much Hasidism, it's mainly Kabbalah. And I'm assuming that those who are listening are going to have some knowledge of Kabbalah. Obviously, most people can't take this book and read it on your own. It is complicated, and I have a very hard time myself reading it as well. But when I have the stamina and the perseverance, and of course the divine assistance, I can break through it. And thank God I did. And I'd love to share. Most of it I think I understand, and I'd like to share this with you. This particular passage with this commentary on the Zohar is also it's related to this week's Torah portion, Parshas Achrei, Achrei Mos Kedoshim, which in both these Torah portions, the Torah speaks about the prohibition of forbidden relationships. And we know that it's one of the things that people have a harder time with on many levels. And this Zohar talks about someone who had succumbed to his temptation and sinned and did what he can to rectify, but the rectification that this person tried doing was insufficient. And then he got help from a great Tzadik, who this great saintly man was able to lift him up and complete the rectification for him. And therefore, I feel also it's a good thing to learn, because we a lot of times feel that we have challenges and difficulties in our own lives and our own sexual lives particularly, and let the merit of this study and this learning help bring all the tikkunim that we need just by reading this story about the tikkun that this person was given. Let this tikkun already happen for everybody, especially all those who study this class, listen to this class. And also, since it's the time of Sfirat Omer, which is the time of Tikkunei HaNefesh, making a tikkun for the soul, on all elements, aspects of repairs that need to be made, this is a good time to study it. Another reason for this class, perhaps we can connect, is because next week is going to be Lag BaOmer, which is the day in which the secrets of the Torah, the Kabbalah, was kind of downloaded to the world in a very big way through Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar, in which he revealed the deepest, highest secrets. So, as a result of that, it is apropos, as a week before Lag BaOmer, tomorrow, Lag BaOmer is going to be Friday, next week Friday. So a week and a day before Lag BaOmer, that we start, it's a good time to prepare ourselves with a good, healthy dose of Zohar. Now, Zohar itself is usually very hard to understand, but here with the commentary of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, especially, you see how every word of the Zohar has so many hidden secrets to it. It is really, really, really incredible. So I want to dedicate this class for Refuah Shalema to Moshe ben Sarah Rivka, you should have a complete refuah shalema. And ready or not, here we go. Now, again, it's a passage of Zohar. It's a commentary of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak. It's a long commentary. And I don't know, if I have the stamina, I would love to teach it all in one shot. I highly doubt, so we might have a part 2. And then in the end of that, what's really cool is that the son of the author, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, brings his father's teaching and gives the most profound but simple, both simplistic and profound lesson. Because this is all very, 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 very esoteric. It's a very esoteric piece. But the Rebbe used to always on Shabbos every week take a passage of his father's commentary and, say an insight on it. And the Rebbe a lot of times just takes these most abstract, distant ideas and makes it so simple and gives a simple lesson for all of us. It's phenomenal. So we'll begin with the Zohar. Okay, the Zohar is in Parshas Achrei. It's on Daf. If you want to look in the Zohar, it's a story recorded in the Zohar of Parshas Achrei, Daf Ayin Hey, page 75, the second side, Amud Beis. It says like this: Reb Abba have a ozol lekaputkia. Reb Abba, one of the great mystics, who is always spoken of in the Zohar, was traveling on the road. He was on the way to a place called Kaputka. Where Kaputka is, I'm not exactly sure. Okay? Somewhere outside of Israel. But where exactly, I'm not sure. He's going to speak about that area where it is, but it doesn't really give us a location that we know. Rabbi Yosei. And Rabbi Abba, together with Rabbi Abba, was Rabbi Yosei. So you got Rabbi, we usually refer to him as Rabbi Yossi, right? So Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Abba are together on the way to Kaputkia. Adava Azli, as they were walking, Chami Barnash, Dava Ase, they saw a person coming their way, coming opposite them. Urishim Achad Ba'ampoi, and they saw that he had a mark on his face. This guy had a mark. I don't know if this mark was visible to everybody. It was a physical mark, or it was a spiritual type of a mark that they can look. We know that tzaddikim, holy people, can see certain stains on a person's face. Anyways, this fellow, he had a mark on his face. And again, I don't know from the Zohar if this was noticeable to every person, but it was definitely a mark that was noticed by these great rabbis. So Rabbi says, let's get off this road. Let's go take another path. Let's we have the GPS is telling us alternate route. Let's go on an alternate route. Why? Because this person's face is testifying the over be'eryasa deraisa, that he was guilty. He transgressed one of the forbidden sexual sins that are of biblical prohibition. Because we know in sexual, the prohibited sexual relationships, there are certain relationships that are forbidden by the Torah, which means biblical, and then there are certain rabbinic prohibitions that come to safeguard the Torah. Now, this person's sin was of a biblical nature. He was able to see on his face. And begin kachas rashim b'yampai. And because this person had a sin, that's why you can see it on his face. And I guess he didn't want to look at this person's face. He didn't even want to travel on the road with him. He felt, I guess, that just passing through him would be is not a good thing. Maybe it would bring a certain contamination to these holy tzaddikim, to these holy righteous people. Amle Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi says to Rabbi Abba, maybe he was born with this. This could be a birthmark. Could be he was born with this from when he was very young. My area by what kind of forbidden relationship could he have? Very small children, young children, they don't have sexual desire. So he didn't do any sin when he was a little boy. So you have to get to what is it called? What do they call it? No, forgot the word right now. You have to reach a certain physical maturity that one already gets desire. So So he says if this is a birthmark, how can you say that this mark is related to a sins that the person did? Amalei. So Rabbi says, you can't fool me. I see it on his face. That it is testifying. His face is obviously, he means that mark on his face is a testimony to the sin that he did, and that the forbidden biblical sin that he did. Okay, but since Rabbi Yossi was challenged him, since Rabbi Yossi had challenged Rabbi Abba, and he said, who knows? So Rabbi Abba wanted to clarify this with Rabbi Yossi. So what did he do? Cutter later Rabbi Abba. So as they passed the person, initially they were going to go on a different road, on a different way. But now he decided to stay the course. And when he got close to him, he calls him over. And he says, Armalai, Ema Miller, tell me something. Hi to Shima de Ampuch, this mark on your face. Mai, what is this? I see you have a mark on your face. I see you have an ugly mark. What is that? Armalai, this guy says, but Matisa Menach, looks like he was a broken soul. Looks like he wasn't comfortable with this mark. Looks like it hurt him. And he said, Matisa, I'm begging you, don't punish me more lahu barnash to this individual. He's referring to himself as this individual. In other words, I'm bleeding enough. Don't add salt to the wound. Don't punish me more than what I've had. Because it's my sin that caused this. Okay. So this person himself wasn't hiding his sins. It says, Achrei, right? It says a person shouldn't hide his sins. So he says, okay. He says, my sin is caused me. He admits to it. So tell me what it is. So he admitted that he sinned, but we don't know if it was a sexual sin, what he did. He says, what did you do? He said, I and my sister were traveling together. And we were on a certain road. We stayed in a motel, we stayed in a hotel, whatever it was. We stayed in an inn, and for the night, we had dinner together. We had some wine. Wine can sometimes, loosen up a person and make a person lose his or her self-control. You get intoxicated, and you get a little loose. And basically, he was blaming his up and coming his behavior that followed on the fact that they drank wine. And that entire night, I unified with my sister. He says, I became one with my sister. He uses, I guess, a cleaner language. He wants to say that he had relations with his sister all night long. Now, obviously, that's a forbidden relationship. That's an incestual relationship. B'tzafra, when I woke up in the morning, I got up. And when I came down for breakfast, down to the lobby in the hotel, I saw that the owner of the inn was in an argument with a person. Maybe he was one of the guests who came. The two of them got into a fight. So I saw these guys are getting heated up. So I wanted to be a good Samaritan, right? A good standby and help out over here. And because I wanted to stop their fight. What happened? I got it from both of them. They both got so angry that I was interfering in their fight, that I was butting in, that this guy beat me from one side, and the other one beat me from the other side. Here, it literal translates, they tied me up from one side and from the other. I guess they tied him up, and in the tying up, they kind of beat him. And then, as I got caught in this thing, I guess, in the beating that I got, again, it doesn't say specifically that they got beaten. He says they tied him from one side and the other side, and somehow this mark ended up by my brain, into my head. Okay. And in other words, this guy got involved in the wrong fight. But I was rescued and I was healed. I mean, what really saved me, there was one doctor, the Izbegavon that was amongst us. So there was a doctor there, And this doctor gave me treatment, and that's simply what saved me. In other words, if not for that doctor, I would have been gone. Looks like this guy got a serious beating. If not for this doctor, I would have been gone. The doctor kind of took care of me. He administered first aid. Who's that doctor you're referring to? He was a great rabbi, Reb Samloi. The rabbi is Rebbe Samloi. That's who he is. Amarle, Manasusa Yavlach. What was the medicine he gave you? Amarle, what kind of healing did he do? Amarle, Asusa Denafsha. He healed my soul. That means he wasn't just bandaging him. He was giving him some kind of a healing to heal him from his sin. Which sin? The fact that he got involved with these two guys wasn't a sin. He was trying to help out. It was the sin that he did the night before with his sister. So now he was given a treatment, a spiritual treatment by this great Rabbi Samlai, who gave him some kind of a tikkun tshuva, some kind of a tikkun of what to do or how to rectify his sin. And from that day and on, from when I met this great doctor, he returned me to do tshuva, to do tshuva, which is repentance. And every day, I look at my face in the mirror, and I still see I have a mark. And I weep, I cry, as I'm trying to do tshuva, I'm trying to do the rectifications he give me, but I still see the mark. And I guess he was blaming the mark, which is still related to the blemish, the spiritual blemish that he did. And I cry before God, the Yiriboin Alman, who is the master of the world. Allahu chayva on that sin. And then when I shed tears, I wash my face with those tears. And hopefully the tears that I'm crying for the sin that I did will remove that mark, hoping. It says it's a great segula for a person to remove the stains on one's soul, which are marked on a person's physical appearance, which obviously we don't see, but the holy, those who have pure eyes can see it. So, but when you wash you wash with tears, that cleans. So that's what the Zohar is saying, that this person said. He tells Reb Abba that I'm trying to get rid of it, and this is quite a while, and my stain is still there. Amar Reb Abi says to him, Ilav desmanim enoch tshuva. Had it not been that the tshuva is being withheld from you, meaning to say that the complete acceptance of your repentance is being withheld. How do we know that? Because you still have a mark on your face. But if not for that, it's a little hard to understand what he's saying over here. I'm just going to read the words, and I still don't hear exactly, because the words are a little bit. He's saying basically, had it not been for this, that the tshuva has been being withheld from you, I will remove, or I would have removed this mark from you. But that's interesting. What I'm not getting over here, again, I'll tell you where I'm struggling over here. The actual meaning of the words are, if not for tshuva being withheld from you. What does that mean? That if tshuva would not have been withheld from you, and your tshuva, your repentance would have been accepted, I would remove the mark from you. But if his tshuva would have been accepted, then his mark then he himself can take care of his mark. The fact that he still has a mark is because his tshuva was not accepted. So that's why he needs this great healer, Rebbe Abba, to help him. And the interesting thing is that Rebbe Abba goes ahead and does help him and removes that mark. So the word over here is where it's basically the general gist of the story is, and this particular part he doesn't explain in his commentary, although meaning exactly, even though he's so meticulous on all the words, this particular part I didn't see answered. Maybe when we'll learn, I'll see something I didn't see till now. But the general gist over here is that Reb Abba is going to heal him. What does he say? I'm going to read upon you. I'm going to call upon you a certain verse. There's a verse in Isaiah, in Yeshaya, chapter 6. It says, V'sar aveinecha, and your sins will be removed. V'chatascha, and your unintentional sins, Avenecha means more intentional sins. V'chatoscha means unintentional sins. To chupar will be wiped away. So he said, I will read upon you this verse. So he's reading up, meaning he's calling upon him. He's doing this verse, saying it on his behalf. And by doing that, he's bleaching his head and removing that mark. And he says to him, Omar leit lazim ne'ema. He says to him, say this 3 times. Say this verse that I say it, repeat after me 3 times. And he repeats this particular verse 3 times. What's the verse? That your sins will be removed from you. Omar leit lazim, then he said it 3 times. This avar reshimu, and he wiped off this mark. Right? Omar Rababa. So Rababa now says to him, after he gets the mark off, he says, Vadai, definitely, marach habayala abramanach. Your master, God, wanted to remove it from you. In other words, I'm only able to do it because God wants it to be removed from you. The Vadai b'tshuva ishtachas. Because definitely your tshuva, you are present in your tshuva, in the literal translation. Which means you are now, you're doing tshuva. You're doing repentance. In other words, I guess he's telling him, the very fact that in the end you met me and I assisted you and I got it off, it's because you're reaching the tikkun you need, the rectification you need, because of the tshuva you're doing. Amar lei. So this guy answers. He's so happy and he's so grateful that this mark is not there. He says, Nadarna mahayoima. I make a promise from today, from this day and onward, to study Torah day and night. He basically takes upon himself to become a Torah scholar and study Torah all the time. Amar lei. So now, after this, Rababa asks him, Mashmach, what's your name? Amar lei. So the man says, Elazar. My name is Elazar. So till now we had a nameless person. Now we find out that this guy's name is Elazar. Amar lei. So he says to him, fantastic. Your name, Elazar, stands for Kael Azar, God assists. Because you take the word Elazar and you divide it, you break it into 2. Kael, which is God. Azar is of assistance. God assisted. So he says, Vadai Shema Garim. Your name is a name of a person, is very much telling about the person. In your name, you have embedded divine assistance. So definitely your name came in good handy because God delivered his assistance to help you. Your God, which is Hashem, helped you. And he was in your support. Shadrei Reb Abba sent him off, and he blessed him. That's the story. Gewalt, a story of how a Tzadik, great saintly person, leads a person to his ultimate tikkun. And you have over here 2 tzaddikim. First, you had Reb Simlai. He was there administering first aid, and he set the guy on a path of tshuva. But it was only the beginning, and Reb Abba comes and completed it. That's the story. Now we're going to take a look at the commentary, and he begins with a whole lot of questions on this story. Let's read inside. Tzaddik love, we need to understand Lama. This is on Likutei Levi Yitzchak Biurei HaZohar. Ha'aras LaSefer HaZohar. Little Ha'aras means little footnotes on the Zohar. It's not such footnotes. These are massive pieces. But, the Rabbi Levi Yitzchak wrote these notes when he was exiled in the worst conditions in a far remote place. He was exiled because of his work to keeping Judaism and strengthening Judaism in the city in Ukraine. They exiled him somewhere in a very, very, very terrible place. And the Russians, the communists, and later he died from that suffering. But while he was there, his wife, the Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Tzimchana, she saw how much her husband is pained by the fact that he can't write down. He had a mind like crazy, and he wants to write Torah, but he didn't have any pen, and he didn't have it. So she would make ink for him from the herbs. She went out to the field. She would find herbs. She would prepare ink. And he had a book of Zohar, and with that he would write down on the side of the Zohar. And then later, she managed to bring these, or they got out these books, and they had it printed, and these are the printings. It's one of the reasons it's so cryptic, because he wrote very, very brief. In any case, we need to understand. Why is it these two sages that are going? I mean, everything is accurate. All the details of the story are going to have significance. From all the sages, why was it these two sages that met together on this stroll? Why are they partners in this walk? And part of the question is, why out of all places did the story happen when they were going to Kaputka? So he's going to explain, first of all, why they're going there and why it happened. Next, Beis. Why is it? Number one, why are they going there? There must be a deeper divine reason why they were going. Number two, why is it that on the way that they were going on that road, they might have gone other times together? But why was it when they were going to this place called Kaputka, why was it on this road that they met this person? He's asking the question, why did Rab Abba notice the blemish and Rabbi Yossi didn't notice the blemish? Rabbi Yossi is also a great Tzadik. He's also one of the sages of the Zohar, one of the great mystics. Rabbi Yossi doesn't notice it, and he thinks that maybe the guy had it from his youth, and he's not diagnosing the situation properly. He's completely misdiagnosing. Rabbi Abba over here is correct, as we see in the story. So why did he say that maybe this happened Kadav Yanuka when he was young, where he's not even possible for him to do that sin, because he's before, what was the word? I just, it flashed in my head and from a distance and I forgot. Puberty. Okay, he's before puberty, he got it, so it couldn't have been a sexual sin. But Rabbi Abba says definitely, I see that this person sinned with a great sin. Rabbi Yossi lo hikr, and Rabbi Yossi did not recognize. So that's his question number 2. It's really question number 3, but he has it all in number 2. Again, why was it that on the way to Kaputka, that's where they met this guy? Rabbi Abba recognizes the sin, and Rabbi Yossi doesn't. Gimel, third question. Why is it that when it seems from the story, the guy sinned with his sister, and then in the morning, these two people were fighting, and he got beaten, he got this mark on his face as a result of mixing into this fight. So the way Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, the author, is seeing it, is that this had something to do, it's almost like a consequence. These people were fighting in the lobby because of the sin that this guy with his sister the night before. It wasn't just another random event that was happening. In other words, sometimes when we get to see events, today's Hayom Yom. Today Hayom Yom says that everything a person sees and hears is the Baal Shem Tov teacher is supposed to be supposed to teach you something in the service of God. So sometimes you come across something nasty, and you're very upset about people doing this, people fighting, or people whatever. It gets you very upset. Maybe one should think, maybe I was the one who made this happen by something that I did. Something you see over here. It's actually him sleeping with his sister the night before in the hotel caused the big mayhem in the lobby, and that's why he got caught in the middle of it, as we're going to see. Mashma, it implies the fact that he had this relation with his sister caused the owner of the inn to fight with this person. So we need to understand what's the connection. Dalit, you see, I told you I'm not going to disappoint. This is a fascinating exploration. Dalit. Why did this guy get involved? Who, in the end, it didn't turn out good for him. Why did he try? Why did it bother him so much? And he wanted them not to fight. Why is it, okay, they're fighting, leave them alone. What's prompting him to stick himself between them and then get hurt. Now, but based on what we said earlier, this is a little bit understood. That he realized, it's possible that he realized that his nus, that his sin that he did the night before caused them to fight. That's why he gets involved. That they shouldn't fight. Again, he realized that he spilled the milk over here, that this is his problem, that he's caused this fight to happen. That's why he's getting involved. Yeah, but we need to understand the deeper meaning of this whole story. Right? Very good. Let's continue. Hey, from here you see that they actually didn't just tie him down, but they actually hit him. Because he says, why did they both beat him? And both of them, which both of them wounded him. He got wounded by both of them. Both of them took part of the beating. This guy beat him from one side, and this guy beat him from the other side. And why? If they beat him, why did the injury happen on his skull, on his head? Exactly. Why did the beating? It could have hurt him. It could have, anywhere else on his body. Why is it that he got injured on his head, or they inflicted a wound on his head? The sixth question. Why did now comes Reb Samlai to the rescue, and he gives him a whole derech in tshuva. He gives him a whole way to do tshuva. And this guy obviously followed through, and he would cry every day. Every day he would wash his face with his tears. Every day. But all of that did not help to remove this stain from his face. Until Reb Abba comes. It was Reb Abba who was able to say with him the right verse. And obviously we understand that he could have said the verse from today till tomorrow, nothing would have happened. The fact that he said it together with Reb Abba had this incredible spiritual ability to remove this stain from his head. So why was Rebbe Samlai's rectification insufficient? And only Rebbe Abba was able to step in and remove the stain. So that needs to be understood. Next, Ma'azeh Rebbe Abba Zayin. Ma'azeh Rebbe Abba lo said the tshuva acheres. Why didn't Reb Abba give him another tshuva? If not for tshuva being held back, in other words, basically said, you can't do it. Tshuva's been, in other words, had Reb Abba seen that this guy has a way to rectify himself, that he can fix it, maybe Reb Abba would have not mixed in. But Reb Abba saw clearly that he cannot fix it. That's why he says, tshuva is being withheld from you. That's the actual words. Tshuva is being withheld from you. You can't do it. But he said, basically, I'm going to take it away. How did he help him? Not by giving him a path to do tshuva. So later we see the guy started to say, I'm going to learn Torah day and night. But that happened after Reb Abba removed the mark. So Reb Abba said, okay, now I'm going to do my thing. You can't do it. I'm going to do it for you, right? So he read upon him this verse, your sin will be removed. It's not understood. Reb Abba himself told him that tshuva is being withheld from you. So what is Reb Abba doing? Magic over here. Reb Abba is saying tshuva rectification is being withheld. Oh, but I'm going to read the verse. How does that work? Usually, you want to help someone, give him the tools to fix. But here it's like, no, you can't help it, I'll do it. But then, how does that work? That's the question. Why did he tell him to say it 3 times? If for whatever reason, this verse, saying it together with Reb Abba, it will help, but why 3 times? Number one, why does he have to say it? Well, obviously it's not coming from him, it's coming from Reb Abba, the healing. So it's good, maybe good enough for Reb Abba says it, that the sage said it. Why does the man himself have to say it? And why does he have to say it 3 times? For us, and then it was removed from him. The 9th question. What is it meaning that after all of this, Rababa said to him, when the stain went away from him, the vaday b'tshuva ishtak. Ooh, now tshuva, you're in the place of tshuva. But he told him you can't do it. Now he says you're in tshuva, and all he did was he said those verses. He said those verses as now you're in the place of tshuva. So what's going on over here? It seems like when he told him you're being withheld from tshuva, meant that the gates are locked. Reb Abba, by saying this verse, cleaned him, but also opened up for him this gate that was locked and brought him into tshuva. Yud, the 10th. So what does that mean? Yud. Why is it that he didn't ask him? He didn't then give him a way. He didn't tell him anything else. But he could. I cleaned him. Fine. What happens after he finished doing this for him? This guy feels so, I guess, elated or elevated, and he makes a promise that he's going to study Torah day and night. And this question is, number one, why did he make a promise? The emphasis is that he didn't just accept it. He made a promise. He made what's called a neder. He made a vow. Shekibul ol beneder dafki. He accepted it with a vow. V'lama oz kibul beneder, and then he could have made a vow on many things. He let me give a lot of tzedakah or something. Nope. He accepted upon himself to study Torah all the time. And if this guy is motivated to study Torah, he has this capability. Why, when the first rabbi gave him a rectification, didn't he accept to study Torah day and night at that time? What happened now with this little incident that Rababa removed the mark from his face and said this verse with him? Now, suddenly, he's promising to study Torah day and night. Yud Aleph. And here's a really good question. This is the question number 11. Lama shah Rab Abba l'shmoi. Az daf keveloi mekoidim. K'sha'amaloi ema mila. Why did Rab Abba now ask his name? After the whole thing, Rab Abba says, oh, by the way, what's your name? But earlier when he meets him, when they initially have an encounter, he just said, hey, sir. What's that ugly mark on your face? He should have said to me, get into the conversation. He says, hey, hello, shalom, what's your name? Introduced himself. After the whole incident, now he asks him what's his name. We need to understand. Yud Beis, and here's the last question. Mao Beis l'shainis. In the end, when he tells him, ooh, your name is a perfect name for you, because his name is Elazar. Elazar means God is assistance. But then he says to him two things. I'm sorry, that's not the last question. This is the second. He asks 13 questions. This is the 12th question. But it's interesting that this question comes in over here. It really belongs to an earlier statement in the Zohar. In the Zohar, it said earlier when the guy said that he cries in front of God every day, he said that he cries in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed is He, which is a term that the sages referred to God. And then he added Ribon Olmin, the masters of the world. So he's referring to God both as HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the master of the world. What is this? Why is this person referring to Hashem with both these titles? And finally, the last question. What is it, the two expressions that Rabbi Abba says to him? That your name is Keil Azar. So he says to him, your God assisted you. Veheva besadach, and he is supporting you. Sayach v'sadach. He says, God is assisting you and he's supporting you. What are these two? Why say both? There must be a deeper meaning. This is the series of questions. And now we're going to go through a incredible journey in the mystical through the eyes of a Kabbalah genius. Only with the holiest eyes. You see about the sage who had a holy eye and he can see the blemish of this person. Here you have the one who's giving commentary. It's so holy eyes to see in the Zohar so much. However, when I'm taking out my phone over here, is I'm taking out my phone because I'm opening up my calculator. The way this all works is that one of the things, he was an incredible mathematician, this rabbi. And everything in Torah, especially, he saw with the lens of Gematria. So we're going to be doing a lot of crunching of numbers. So we're going to be doing a lot of Kabbalah and a lot of crunching of numbers, and because he's going to make massive associations with all these numbers. So we're going to have mystical ideas with numbers, and with all of this whole story is going to come together like an incredible tapestry. So let's start. In Yinyah Shloimar, the idea is as follows. For behold, Reb Abba, hu bchinas bina. But one of the things Rabbi Levi Yitzchak always does is he always looks at the person who's making the statement, or as the story that the Zohar, when the Zohar speaks about a certain individual, he looks into the DNA of that individual. Who is that individual? And if it's a holy sage, a holy mystic, he looks in the unique soul DNA of that individual. So he says, we have two rabbis over here who are both sharing the road. Reb Abba and Reb Yossi. So what's the DNA of, and if we understand the spiritual DNA of Reb Abba and the spiritual DNA of Reb Yossi, then we'll understand why they happen to meet together and going on a journey to Kaputka. Let's see why. He says, Reb Abba b'chinas bina. Reb Abba, his soul root, his what dominates, where his neshama comes from, he is the embodiment of the attribute, the divine attribute of bina, which is understanding. Interesting, because he doesn't give an explanation. Usually he right away gives an explanation, and over here he doesn't give an explanation. He does not give an explanation why Reb Abba is bina. I would think Abba, if anything, is Chachma, because we know Chachma is called father. It's called Abba. In Kabbalah, Chachma is called father, and bina is called mother. If this person's named Reb Abba, he's got to be related to Chachma, not related to bina. But yet, he says over here that Rabba is Bina, not Chachma. Now, he does not give an explanation, but he does give a Kabbalah source. He says, look at this place, you will see. But I don't have that book in which he's giving me a source. I can't look it up, because probably over there it gives an explanation why Reb Abba is related to Bina. Okay, but let's see what the source is in a moment. Reb Abba b'chinas Bina. Reb Abba is Bina. Reb Yossi, and Reb Yossi b'chinas Malchus. Reb Yossi is Malchut. So now, the connection of Reb Yossi to Malchus is explained many times in the writings of Reb Levi Yitzchak, and begin with the name Yossi is numeric value of Yossi. It doesn't say it over here, but the name of the numeric value of Yossi, let's take a look at Yossi. Yud is 10, Vav is 6, 16, and then Samach is 60. So it's 76 plus another 10 is 86. 86 is the numeric value of God's name Elokim. And Elokim is a name associated with Malchut. Because Malchut is the source of nature. Elokim is Gematria HaTeva, which is nature. So Rabbi Yossi, and there's other explanations he gives in other places. How you see Rabbi Yossi is, for many reasons, Rabbi Yossi is the attribute, is the embodiment of Malchus. Rabbi Abba is Bina. Now, this idea, it is stated in the Cabalistic book called Nitzutze Oiros, Bereisha Idra Rabba, in the beginning of the Idra. The Idra is a passage of the Zohar, Parshas Naso. There's a passage of the Zohar called the Idra. It was said in Idra, I think, means in a circle. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai divulged the highest secrets, and so much that there were sages who died in that divulging of secrets. That's how high it was. It was an absolute stunning revelation. So in the beginning of the Idra Rabbah, there is a pirush, a commentary in the Sefer called Nitzutze Oiros, and over there he explains that Rabbi Yossi is Malchus and Rabbi Abba is Bina. V'ayin b'Koil Barama Sham, also look in Koil Barama, which is again another Kabbalah book. And maybe if I did some research online, I would find it and I can look it up, but I didn't do that. So we're going to take it with faith, based on what he says, that Reb Abba is the attribute of Bina, and Reb Yossi is the attribute of Malchus. The Imkein. Hemal derech hatrein heyin. So now, right away, these two, then they represent the two heys of God's name. In Hashem's name, in the Sfirot and the attributes, we know all of the 10 attributes are hinted to, and they are expressed, or they are symbolized in the letters of God's name. Which name? The 4-letter name of Hashem, the highest name of God, the Yud Kei Vav Kei. So we know that the first Hey, the former Hey, is Bina, and the latter Hey is Malchus. These are the 2 feminine letters, because Bina and Malchus are both female, and the Yud and the Vav of God's name are both masculine letters. Hey and Hey are the 2 females, which are Bina and Malchus. So now Rab Abba and Rab Yosi have these 2 energies of Bina and Malchus. Which are Bina and Malchus. Okay, so now we have a little bit more insight in the story. Who is taking a walk over here? These 2 powerful, godly people, who they are the embodiment of the 2 letters of God's name, the 2 Heys of God's name. They're walking together. Now, this idea that these two females, so to speak, these 2 godly dynamics, feminine energies of Bina and Malchus walk together, that they both stroll in the park together, take a stroll in the park, is not a new thing. We find that they have taken walks in the past, meaning that these 2 spiritual energies like to hang out together for a walk. Bina and Malchus a lot of times called mother and daughter, because Bina is the mother, and so they walk together. Like a mom and a daughter take a walk. Now, but he says, actually, when he says that these 2 walk together in the past, is a story related to the upcoming holiday of Shavuot, where we read the Megillah of Ruth. And in Ruth, it says over there how Ruth and her mother-in-law, okay, Ruth who wanted to become a convert. Ruth was a Moabite princess. She married this Jewish, she and Orpah were 2 Moabite princesses who married these 2 Jewish men who left the land of Israel, Machloin and Chilyon. These were 2 great, from a very distinguished, great, prestigious family. When they left the land of Israel, they intermarried with non-Jews. And then their husbands died. And Naomi, their mother-in-law, was initially a very rich lady, lost all her wealth, and so on and so forth. She was a broken person, and she said, I am going back home. And she told them, stay over here. You guys can marry whoever you want. My 2 sons are not here anymore. She says to her daughter-in-law, and they both, however, want to go with her. In the end, she convinces Orpah to stay behind, and Ruth decides to come along. She clings to her mother-in-law, and then she converts. Great story. She becomes the great-great-grandma of King David, and eventually she's also the great-great-grandma of Mashiach. So she's a super, what is it called? A heroine. She's a real hero, right? She's a real great woman. So it's explained in Kabbalah that these 2 women, Ruth and Naomi, so Naomi, the mother-in-law, she is Bina, and Ruth is Malchut. That's why from Ruth comes King David, who is Malchus. But Naomi is from the same word Noam. Noam means pleasantness and pleasure. And in Bina is the revelation of the divine pleasure. Again, I'm going to be, if I go into long explanations over here, we'll never finish. So therefore, I'm just doing very brief. Bina is where the Tainog, where the Keter, the innermost of Keter, which is Atik Yom, in the level of pleasure, reveals itself in Bina. So Bina, therefore, is called is also called Noam, because Noam is pleasure. And that's why Naomi, which is the same, which has most of the letters of Noam in it, is related, everything is in a name, she's related to Bina. And Ruth is the mother of kingship, and she's Malchut. Okay. And we see that they walk together. So there as well. Shtei Ahei, and the 2 Heys of God's name are taking a stroll together. Shem Nomi Verus, which they are Naomi and Rus. Bina Malchus. Bina and Malchus. Verus, so he said Tafel Lenomi. Now we know in the story of Ruth and Naomi that Ruth was secondary to Naomi. It says that Ruth went along with her. Who was the one who decided on this journey? Who is this one who decided who's setting the destination? Who is the main traveler and who's the tag along? The main traveler was Naomi, and Ruth was a tag along. The same is also and that is because Bina is far superior than Malchut. Bina is much higher than Malchut. Bina is above the 6 emotional sefirot, which the 6 emotions, she's the mother of those attributes, and those attributes become the influencer of Malchut. Malchut is a recipient much lower. The former Hey of God's name is far more expansive and godlier than the latter Hey. So we can understand why the Ruth was secondary to Naomi. She goes along, she's the tag along to Naomi. And the same thing is reflected in this story. It doesn't say that Reb Abba and Reb Yossi were walking to Kaputka. It says Reb Abba was going, and Reb Yossi was going along with him. It's almost like Reb Yossi was his attendant. It fits really well, because if Reb Yossi is Malchus, and Reb Abba is Bina, we can understand why the primary journeyer is Rebbe Abba, because Bina is the main, is the big one over here. And Reb Yossi is going along just to be like an assistant. Rus I said Tafel and Nomi, and Rus was a secondary element to Nomi, ki Bina Gavayim Malchus, because Bina is much higher than Malchus. Rus Amra, and Rus says, I'm not mixing in at all on where we're gonna go, where we're gonna stay, where, which hotel we should stay in, where we should lodge, I'm not deciding anything. What did she say? Wherever you go, I'm going along with you. So the same thing is reflected over here. Itmar, we can see it says Reb Abba is going. It doesn't even say that they planned this trip together. Reb Abba was going to Kaputka. That's how the Zohar starts. For Reb Yossi Ime, and Reb Yossi went along with him. Pidish Ime, what does it mean with him? He was secondary to him. Now, okay. So now that we know who the journeyers are, now let's understand the destination. Where are they going? What's the Cabalistic meaning of the place that they're going to? And why would they both be going there? They went to Kaputka. Kaputka, who Kaftar. Now Kaputka is an Aramaic word for a word that's stated in the Torah, a place that's stated in the Torah with another name. And what is that name? The place is called Kaftar. Kaftar, which means actually a button. So the Torah speaks about an ancient people called Kaftorim. It says in the verse, let me tell you, hold on. When this is in when it enlists in Genesis in Parshas Noach, it lists the children of Cham. So one of his children of Cham, who was one of the 3 children of Noach, right? One of his children was Egypt, Mitzrayim. Now Mitzrayim had a few children. Mitzrayim is one of the sons, is a grandson of Cham. Now he has a few children, and one of the great grandchildren of Cham, even though Mitzrayim has a country named after him, but there were other tribes who come from him. One of them is Kaftorim, who come from the city of Kaftor, who built up the city Kaftor. So there's a place called Kaftor. Now the Targum, the translation, the Aramaic translation that we have from Onkelos, right, the great translation on Bereshis, translates the word Kaftorim, who come from Kaftor, as Kaputkia. So you see that Kaputkia is really the place called Kaftor. So if we would just be dealing with Kaputkia, maybe we couldn't figure it out, but now we have a clue. Once we know that Kaputkia is Kaftor, now we broke it open. Because now we can know the DNA of the place. Why? Kaputkia hu Kaftor. Where do we know that? The Targum Noach, and the Targum, the translation in Noach, Siman Yud in chapter 10, Pasuk Yudalid, verse number 14. It says, Ve'es Kaftorim. In the verse it says, and the Kaftorim, the sons of Mitzrayim. And the Targum says, V'yas kat Kaputkia, and Kaputkia. So you see, Kaputkia is Kaftar, and Kaftar means buttons. Ooh. He finds it in two places. And then in Deuteronomy, in Devarim, Perek Beis, in the second chapter, Perek Chav Gimel, it says, Kaftorim ayotzim e Kaftara. That's where it says ayotzim. It says the people Kaftorim who come from Kaftar. Targumai, what does the Targum say? Kaputkia, these Kaputkianites, the Nafkum e Kaputkia, that come from Kaputkia. There is a people of Kaputkia that come from Kaputkia. Okay. So now we have something to work with. Kaftor is related to the element of Yesod. It's interesting how we're speaking about it twice this week. In the Monday class, I spoke a lot about the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe and about Yosef Tzadik and how the 5 Chassadim, the 5 powers of Chesed, reveal themselves in the Yesod. Listen to that class. We spoke a lot about Yesod. Well, this place, Kaftar, which means button, is related to the feature of Yesod. It's the attribute. Because a place also has an energy. Besides, people have an energy. So the energy of the place is related to one of the Sfirot. What's the city of Kaftar all about? In that city is the energy of Yesod. Which Yesod? There is the Yesod of the male and the Yesod of the female. The Yesod that we're talking about over here is the male Yesod. What is the Yesod? The Yesod in the person, we know we have the 10 Sfirot are manifest physiologically in our bodies as well. The right hand, for instance, as we know, is Chesed. The left hand is Gevura. The torso is the midsection is the Tiferet. Right leg is Netzach. Left leg is Hod, which is glory. The right leg is Netzach, which is perseverance and victory. And Yesod is the reproductive organ, and that's called Yesod. But it's basically the genitals, both by the man and by the woman. By the man, it's called the Yesod de Tchura, the male Yesod. And by the woman, it's called the Yesod de Nukva. It's the female Yesod. Now, the male's Yesod is called Kaftar. Now, simply let's think of it for a moment. He doesn't explain, but it makes sense. What is a Kaftar? A Kaftar is a button. What's a button? A button that connects two things. Two sides of a garment, two objects. You want to connect them, you put a button, and that holds them together. What's the idea of the Yesod, the reproductive element? It's a place for intimacy and it's a place for connection. Where two, like the verse says, that man and woman, they become one flesh. So the Yesod is, and it's really an element of male and female, because a button is inserted inside. There's the button hole, which is the receptor, and that would be like the female Yesod. And the button is inserted in, which would be the male Yesod. And therefore, the place called Kaftar. And then, by the way, when I learned this, I said, that's the reason why the previous Rebbe, who is spiritually the element of Yesod, why he said that we're ready for Mashiach. Everything is finished. The only thing we need to do is we need to polish the buttons. The Rebbe would always speak about the buttons, that his father-in-law spoke about polishing the buttons. Simply, it means that when a uniform is all pressed and fixed, and the soldiers are ready to put on the uniform, or whoever wears the uniform, the last thing that's needed is just a little shining of the buttons, that it really, really is spent. Meaning to say, a small little thing is all that's needed. But everything is accurate. Why did he pick shining the buttons? Why not the last polishing of the shoes, the boots, buttons? The previous Rebbe is connected to the buttons. And I guess the polishing of the buttons then, according to this, takes on a whole new meaning. Maybe it means a certain purification that is still needed in the element of the sexuality of the world. It needs to shine. It needs to be rectified. Now, it doesn't only mean, because people will say, I was thinking about this, I'll say, well, if that's all we need, the last generation is pretty challenged in this, because we're dealing with a world where there's so much promiscuity all over the place, and there's pornography, and everybody, and today's days, there's so much access to all this garbage in front of our faces. It used to be, at least outside, that the world was more modest. From the 1940s, or in the days of the Frierdiker Rebbe coming to America, and all of this exposure is like makes it so much more challenging, particularly regarding the holiness. This week's Torah portion, Kedoshim Tihyu, be holy, regarding sexual matters. So it's like all we need to do is polish the button. Seems like a big deal. However, interesting that we always emphasize, and when it comes to Yesod, the tikkun of Yesod, in most places, because people are very busy with this, most people emphasize only the referring from the unholy, which means not to have negative, not to follow one's earthy, animalistic impulses, right? In all these aspects, not to look where you shouldn't see, and don't look at immodest things, and not to see things, and not to have negative thoughts, and not to, right? All of that is usually, that's the tikkun of Yesod. But we're not realizing that Yesod actually has a side of aseh tov, doing good. Just like physically, a person has a reproductive power. It's not just about keeping it out from where it shouldn't be. It's through that power that you have children. It's through that power that you have the holiest experience in your life, which is an intimacy between a man and a woman, which could be on the highest, godliest thing. That's the way we look at it in Judaism. So that's in the physical level. But on the psychological level, which means not just physical intimacy, the power of Yesod is the power to bond with people, to connect with people. And that's one of the things that the previous Rebbe brought to the world, is the concept that we're all responsible for each other, and we should reach out and do mitzvot with other Jews. The whole concept of mitzvayim, of going out and helping Jews do mitzvahs and shlichus, and it really, even though the Rebbe was the one who really developed it, it's all really original. The origins of it is the previous Rebbe. He's like the one who starts this whole outreach kind of a thing, which is all based on Yesod. So we put so much emphasis on fixing the Yesod by not sinning. That's the way it's done in many circles. But in Chabad, even though they don't talk about it so much, you won't hear Chabad rabbis talking so much about the rectification of sexual sins. It was never a topic that was so discussed. But it's not because it's ignored, but because rather emphasize the positive, the doing good through the power of Yesod. And that is allowing the power of bonding that we have to be utilized in a holy bonding by connecting to people and elevating them and connecting them in a holy way. And probably I would say that the more one does that, that itself keeps a person out of impure thoughts and negative things, because you're activating your Yesod in a very good way. But this is just a side note related to the idea that he says that kaftor, which is a button, represents the male Yesod. Okay? So Reb Abba, who is Bina, and Reb Yossi, who's Malchus, they are traveling to this place called Kaputka, which we just identified that Kaputka is just an Aramaic name for a place called Kaftar, and Kaftar is Yesod. Now we'll already see for one moment why this whole story of a person having a blemish with his sexuality happened on this road to Kaputka, because this is the road of Yesod, and Yesod is where the sexual element of a human being, and that's where one can either use their sexuality in a positive way, or they can mess it up. And here they met a person, and we can look at the story and see a story of a mess up, or you can see the story of a rectification of the Yesod. It happened on this road because this is the place where this energy is present. Okay? So now let's continue. As it says in Ma'orei Or, which is this book, a book of Kabbalah, encyclopedia on Kabbalah by Rameir Papresh, great Kabbalist. He wrote this book as an encyclopedia of like he takes all the city like phenomenon, all elements in this world, and explains its, let's say, an animal, a tzvi, a deer. What is a tzvi kabbalistically? What does it represent, or what is that, right? So he brings the idea. He speaks about buttons, a kaftar, and he says what a kaftar is. Over here, kaftar nikra hazachar. The male is called kaftar. V'siman akat v'ferach. Okay, and he gives a whole kabbalistic explanation over here. Oh, here he says it even stronger. Kaftar nikra yesayid chura. Boilet. The man's yesod, which is protruding out, as opposed to the woman, who her yesod is a receptacle. And the woman's yesod, he says, is called perach, which is flower. So the man's yesod is protruding. The woman is perach, which is flower. And that's why it says, in a verse, it says, kaftor v'ferach. This is this marriage between the two yesodot. Okay. Now, I am Ashenirshim Begilian Azayra Kaddish, Besiata Deshmai, Parshas Save, Tavkuf Samach Zayin Amen Aleph, Amamer Azayas, Chaliya Bid Bechalma. In other words, he says, take a look at a different notes that I wrote on a different Zohar, where there it speaks about a person who saw in his dream, he saw something in a dream, and he saw this sage, Rabbi Yitzchak Kaftora. He saw the sage Rabbi Yitzchak from Kaftor. So over there, the Rebbe's father, the author, discusses the concept of why Kaftor and its association with Yesod. Ayin Shah. Okay. But if you know the Rebbe's father, the author, he's not just satisfied with that. He's now going to do a literal surgery on the word Kaputka. Because it's one thing that Kaftor means button, and that's associated with Yesod, as we discussed earlier. But the Aramaic name, and the one that the Zohar uses, is not Kaftar, is Kaputka. So it must be hinted to, in this Aramaic word, the relationship to Yesod. So he's going to explain. Kaputka, Gematria, Hadar Mahatabe'el. Take the word Kaputka. The Gematria of the word Kaputka, should have written this down earlier, but I didn't. And I'm slow with numbers, so I'm going to have to do it now. Okay, so I'm going to give you the Gematria of the word Kaputka. We start with Kuf Pei, which is 180. And then Vav and Tes is 15, plus Kuf is another 100, so let's make plus 150. No, 115, I'm sorry. Vav Tes is 15 plus 100. Oops, sorry. Plus 115. And then plus 11. Yeah. The word Kaputkia is, the numeric value of it is 306. Okay, 306. Now he says that this is the same numeric value, the same number, as the gematria of two words, Hadar and Mehatabel. So let's first check that. We always want to check everything out. Hadar is 209. 209 plus Mehatabel, 45 plus 10 is 45 plus 10 is 55. Plus 9 is 64. Let's just stop over here. Plus 64 plus Bay's Aleph is 3 plus 33. Yeah, 306. He's right. Go and catch him. It's so these are exact the same numeric value. Hadar and Meitabel. What does it have to do with Hadar and Meitabel? So What does Hadar and Meitabel mean? So in Bereshis, in Genesis, in Parshas Vayishlach, which is, it names all the kings, all the way in the end of the Parsha Vayishlach, it names all the kings of Edom. And it says there, over there at this, how they reigned and they died. They reigned and they died. And it mentions 7 kings who died. And then it mentions an 8th king. By the 8th king is the first king, and his name is Hadar. And by all the other kings, it only mentions the king that died. It doesn't mention that they were married. By the king Hadar, it says that he had a wife, Hashem Ishtoi Mehetabel, that his wife was Mehetabel. So in the Arizal, in the writings of Arizal, it explains that the 7 kings who died, they are the 7 ancient kings from the world of Tohu who collapse. Like the world of Tohu, again, these are concepts that I'm not going to explain now. Again, it's an ancient world that is energies were too strong and it collapsed. Fine. The 8th king, whose name is Hadar, that is the root of the world of Tikkun. That's the beginning of the world of Tikkun. And that is the root of Yosef. Yosef, Tzadik, the great saintly Joseph, who is the embodiment of Yesod, like we discussed. He's the 60. He's the embodiment of the male Yesod. That's why he's the one who has the tests of a sexual nature. He's tempted by the wife of his master, and she grabs him by the garment, and he almost sins, but then he overcomes this temptation because he's the power of Yesod. We discussed it in our last class. You can listen to it. The class that I told you in the beginning, I recommended listening to. The class called the 4th download of 5785. So on that class, so there we discussed this, that Yosef, okay. So it says that, now one of the features about Yosef, it says, is that Yosef was good looking. Yefei Toar v'Yefei Mara. He was very, very handsome. And then that's why he exuded a very powerful sexual energy, because this was his holy energy. That's why she took a liking to him. She wanted to get him to sin. As his strength was this enormous, powerful bonding energy that he had. And she was just so good looking. The 8th king that's mentioned over there, which according to the Arizal, in addition to a physical mortal kings, it's representing the spiritual dynamics on the very, very high level. The 8th king, which is the king of Hadar, he's the source of Yosef, and this is related to Yesod, the Yesod of Tikkun. And that's why he's the only one who has a wife. Because Tohu is things don't get along with each other. In the ancient world of Tohu, there was very explosive energy. So marriage is not an institution of Tohu. And if it's a marriage, it will fall apart. Divorce is a remnants from the world of Tohu. Tikkun is Shalom Bayis. Tikkun is unification, peace, and harmony. That's the world of Tikkun. So the only king who would discuss as his wife is Hadar. So Hadar and Mehatabel, they both are related to Yosef. They're both related to the energy of Yesod. Now the Yesod of a male, sorry, it gets a little graphic over here. The Yesod of a male, which is the sexual organ in a person, has 2 parts to it. There is the organ itself, and then there is the crown that's on top of it, which obviously has great spiritual and godly meaning, because everything in the physical world is a physical incarnation of spiritual godly meanings. These 2 names, Hadar and Mehetabel, even though in the original story in the Torah, Mehetabel is the wife, but in the spiritual dynamics, Hadar, now I'm not sure which one is which because he doesn't say over here, but I would imagine that Hadar is the Yesod itself, and the Mehetabel is the crown of the Yesod. That's what he says over here. Now, by the way, Tov, in the word Meheta, in Hadar means beautiful, which is related to the masculine beauty. The word Hitav El has the word Tav Kel, Tov Kel, which we know that Yesod is called Tov. The number 17 is particularly related to Yesod. 17 is Gematria Tov. That's why by Joseph it mentions in the Torah. The first time it speaks about Joseph, it mentions that he was 17 years old. That was his age when the whole drama of Yosef starts. It connects to what we were learning about the 5 Tovs, which are come down in Yosef particularly. So again, this is brief. What he's saying is Kaputkia is the same numeric value, 306, of Hadar and Mehitabel, which shows you that Kaputkia is the male Yesod. Because the male Yesod has both the Yesod itself and the crown of the Yesod. V'hainu, Yesod de Duchra, the Yesod of the male, HaKolel, that includes within it Yesod, the Yesod itself, V'atara, and the crown. Ukemoi, and this is similar, to Heichal Livnas HaSapir. There is a certain chamber in the mystical high worlds above called the chamber of the bricks of sapphire, Livnas HaSapir, which, and Kabbalistically, this chamber is the chamber of Yesod. Shu Yesod va'atarasa is the Yesod and its crown. Fine. Again, it's we can't get stuck on every little detail because it's never going to end. And I don't even have necessarily the knowledge to share with you on exactly what, why, and what. But the little bit that I do know is that Hadar and Ma'atabel represent, in all over Hasidus we learn it, they're the root of Yosef, and they are so they're related to Yesod. Fine. V'ayim Beitz Chaim Shar Kisei HaKavod Perigimel. Also look in Eitz Chaim, the Shar Kisei HaKavod, third chapter where he talks about this. The Imken comes out Kaputkia, the Kaputkia, who al derech b'chinas Yosef. This is the Kaputka is related to Yosef, Shu Yesod, which is Yesod. Okay, now that we have designated and understand that Kaputka, which is Kaftor, which is this place is the Yesod element that we've got, we now need to find why Reb Abba and Reb Yossi, who are not the energy of Yesod, Reb Abba is Bina, and Reb Yossi is Malchut, why are they walking to Kaputkia? Why not find another sage who he embodies Yesod? He should be the one walking. We're soon going to see Reb Samlai, one of the sages mentioned over here, the one who gives the guy the rectification, actually the doctor, the spiritual healer, the one who began the healing process. His energy is Yesod, and he's going to explain that soon at great length. He is Yesod. And that's why he happened to be in Kaputkia. No, doesn't say that he was in Kaputkia. He was there at the inn, wherever that was. I don't know where that was. But he is Yesod. But Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yossi, they're not Yesod. Why are they going there? Rabbi Abba Bina, Rabbi Yossi Malchus Hochush Neim LeKaputkia. They're both going to Kaputkia. Hu al derech mashakasa b'Yosef b'chinas Yesod. So it's similar to what it says by Joseph, who is Yesod. HaKoilel Yesod va'atara. As we said earlier, that Yosef includes both the Yesod and the Atara, as we said earlier, the organ itself and the crown. Or the core, what do they call it? Cornea, whatever they call it. What does it say by Yosef? It says, Ad Tavas Givas Oilam. It says by Yosef, the full verse is, let me get a chumash. Tavoisal Rosh Yosef, says the blessing should come to him. Ad Tavas. What's the word? Let me get a chumash. I'm sorry, I'll step away a second. I think it's in the Zois HaBracha when he blesses Yosef, Moshe. Megan give us him no. So then it has to be in the blessings that Yaakov gives Yosef. In Genesis, in the blessings that Jacob gives for Yosef. Let's open it up over here. Check it out. Jacob's blessing. Here you go. Yeah. Birchas avicha, the blessings of your fathers, Gavru, strengthened. Al birchas hoirai, on the blessing of your father, Jacob is saying to Joseph, his beloved son. The blessings of your father are even more powerful than the blessings of my parents. Ad taivas give us olam, until up to the let's say we translate it over here in the art scroll. The blessings of your father surpassed the blessings of my parents to the endless bounds of the world's hills. In other words, the blessing goes to the farthest, to the endless boundaries of the world's hills. Okay, that's a simple meaning. Another meaning in these words, taiva can also mean the desire. We know a lust is called a taiva. So a very strong longing and a desire. From who? So Yaakov is saying, Joseph, you have this magnetic pull that givois olam, the hills of the world, the hills, they desire you very much. What's the deeper meaning? What does it mean the hills desire? The females love him, are attracted to him. Now, what did you see? You see, Joseph was all the women they wanted. It's not only the wife of Potiphar. We find that when Joseph paraded in Egypt, it says that all the women were jumping and climbing on the walls to see him. He was just someone they all wanted to see. So, but spiritually, what does that mean? The spiritual women, which are both Bina and Malchut. Now, first of all, let's understand something. The men in the Torah, men are called mountains and women are called hills. We find that many places in the Torah. Simply a man is bigger than a woman, usually taller, and therefore the mountains and the hills are the men and the woman. Like, for example, when Bilam says, I see the Jewish people, Meirosh Tsurim Arenu, I see their beginnings from big mountains, Umigva'os, and from hilltops, Asherenu, I gaze on them. So the hills, the sages say, it's the merit of our mothers that are called the hills, and the merit of our fathers that are called mountains. Over here it says, the hills of the world. So it's referring to the female giants. So spiritually, who are the female giants? We discussed earlier, there are two females in the divine realm, there are two females, two attributes that are female. The two Hays of God's name, Naomi and Ruth, or, right, mother and daughter, or mother-in-law and daughter-in-law in that case, or Bina and Malchus, or Rabbi Yossi, who's the energy of Malchut, and Rab Abba, who's the energy of Bina. Okay, so these two, they have a taiva, they have a desire to Yesod. They want to go to, they're longing for Yosef. So why is that? Now Malchus we understand, because it says regarding a woman, to your husband will be your desire. It's the sexual desire of a woman to her man. So we can understand that Malchus is a receiving from the spiritual light of Yesod. So Malchut has a desire for Yesod. So we would understand why Rabbi Yossi was on his way to Kaputka. But why is Reb Abba going? Reb Abba's Bina is the mother. Why, she's higher than Yesod. The answer is her desire is not to receive from Yosef, receive from Yesod. Her desire is to give, to nurse, to give all she got to her son so that he can have it and he can pass it over to his wife. In other words, there's two powerful passions over here. There's the passion of the recipient to her transmitter, and the passion of the transmitter to give to her son. Yesod wants to give, Bina wants to give to the emotions, to the male sphirot that are below. And therefore, they're both traveling to Yesod. And that's what he's explaining over here. Atavas give us olam shapirush, and the meaning is shatrein almin, the two worlds. Givois olam. It's interesting. Givois means hills, which, as we said before, is women. but also olam, which means worlds, which it says that Bina and Malchus are called the two worlds. There's the energy of the world, which is the male, and there is the world itself, the receptacle. So Bina and Malchus, the two Hays, are called two worlds. Shatrein Almin, the two worlds, which are sometimes referred to as Yovel and Shemitah. He's throwing in this. I tell you, this is Kabbalah concentrate. This is like very intense. I told you, he only wrote Jotted in. These two worlds, Bina and Malchus, are also referred to in many places as Jubilee and sabbatical. We know that the land, and land is also female, the land of Israel needed to rest both on every 7th year, which is a Shabbos, and also the 50th year, which is the Jubilee year. And that's because in those years is when it's manifesting these spiritual feminine energies. Shemitah is the 7th, which is, Shemitah is the sabbatical year, every 7th year, when you have to allow your land to lay silent without working the land. So Shemitah is Malchus, because it's 7. The Malchus is the 7th Sphira. Yovel, which happens after 7 cycles of 7, after 49 years, the 50th year, is Bina. Bina is associated with 50 because we know there are 50 gates in Bina. Nun Shari Bina. So Yovel and Shemitah are Bina and Malchus. So these are the two worlds. And we know also that Yovel is called a world. How do we know it's called a world? Because it says, Va'avadai la'olam, you should work for him forever, and it means Tul Yovel. So Yovel is called a world. So the two worlds, Yovel and Shemitah, Bina and Malchus, Tavasam, their lust, so to speak, their desire, hu lepchinas ad pchinas yesod. They're searching, they want to go to Yesod. Now, ad, it says ad tavas. And ad is 74. Aid. So aid is called Yesod. Yesod is called aid, ayin dalet. Why is Yesod called ad? I'm not sure. Don't remember. I spoke a lot about 74 this year. That this year is the 74th year of the Rebbe's leadership. But why is I don't remember right now why Yesod is called ad. But in any case, he's learning in the verse ad, which is Yesod, Taivas. That's the desire of Givas Olam. The two hills of the world, they are desiring to go to Yesod. Why? Explains. Tiifta the Yovel Bina Lashpi Aloi. The desire, the taiva of Yovel, of Bina, is to be mashpia, to give, to influence, and give to Yosef, to give to Yesod. The Tiifta the Shemitah, and the longing of Shemitah, which is the Malchut element, Malchus, lekabel memeno, to receive from it. As stated in Zohar, you can look it up. I didn't look it up. Parshas Ve'era, page 22, first side. Look in a few different sources. You will see that they're both, these two female elements are fascinated with Yosef. One to transmit them and one to receive. And this is the reason why both of them were going. Rab Abba and Rabbi Yosi, Bina and Malchus, Kaputka. That's why they were both going to Kaputka. Yesod, they were going towards Yesod. Rab Abba lashpialoi, Rab Abba to bring life and to bring the lights of Bina into Yesod. For Rabbi Yosi, and Rabbi Yosi was going lekabel memeno, to receive from it. Now, in a parenthesis, he does something really cool. Ukeshetetztarif Abba im Kaputka. Now, if Abba is going to Kaputka, you have a person, Rebbe Abba. If you take the word Abba and add it to the word Kaputka, because now Abba is going to land in Kaputka. So you have a person who's bringing his energy to Kaputka. So the Gematria now, we're going to make a Gematria of these two people, of each person with the place. So something magnificent is going to come out. When Abba, we take the word Rebbe, just Abba itself. Abba is a very easy Gematria. It's 4. Aleph, Beis, Aleph. 2 Alephs are, each one is 1, and Beis is 2, so it's 4. So 306 plus 4 is 310. So Abba together with Kaputkia is 310. So he says. And when we take, he says, the start of Abba and Kaputkia, when we put Abba together with Kaputkia, Gematria Yesh. You're going to get the Gematria of Yesh, which Yesh is Yud Shin, which is 310. Fine. Ukish, this is still a half of an idea. Let's see. Ukish Starif Yoisi im Kaputkia. Now we're going to take the second sage, Yoisi, who's the Malchus, which is 86. 86 plus 306. Gematria, the Gematria for that is going to be 392. So you have 310 plus 392. So now let's take 310 and 392 and add them both together. So 300 and 300 is 600. 92 plus 10 is 102. So 600 plus 102 is 702. So, okay, what's significant with 702? 702 is the Gematria of Shabbos. Saturday, Shabbos. So what does Shabbos have to do with Yoisi, which means Yoisi, which is Malchus, connecting to Kaputkia, which is Yesod, and Bina, which is Abba, connecting to Yesod. It almost seems like when Abba, who is Bina, will land in Yesod, and Rabbi Yoisi, which is Malchus, will land in Yesod, that's when you have Shabbos. So why is that? Biyachad Gematria Shabbos. Together, it's Shabbos. Shekoy al Yesod. Now, I would always think that Shabbos is Malchut, because it's the seventh day. Malchus is Shabbos. He's introducing another Kabbalistic idea, that in some places in Kabbalah it says that Shabbos is not what we think is Malchus. Shabbos is primarily Yesod. Why? Why would Yesod? Yesod is the sixth one of the emotions. Shabbos is the seventh day of the week. Friday is Yesod, not Shabbos. Shabbos is Malchus. Shabbos HaMalka, it's even called the Queen Shabbos, which is Malchus. No, there is a certain count in where Shabbos is Yesod. He's not dismissing that Shabbos is not Malchus, but there is also an element in Shabbos which is Yesod. Why? Because Yesod is the seventh attribute from Bina. When you count from Chesed, Gevura, then Malchus is the seventh and Yesod is the sixth. But when you count from Bina, and you count along Bina, Chesed, Gevura, Teferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Now, why would we count from Bina? He's not explaining over here. But there's a certain Kabbalistic count where you start counting from the mother. She's counted along with her sons, with the children. And that you shvi lebina, or makabel mebina, and he receives from Bina. And he brings over Rav Pa'alim Mekaptziel, Bagdam Zayra Kadosh Tavov. I'm not going to get into that now. And what happens? Uboy Shavas v'naychel enukva. When Yesod receives from Bina, that's when he can make a naicha, he can make a calmness, he can fulfill the nukva. What does that mean? We learned earlier that the Malchus is always striving to receive from Yesod. Malchus is in a state of like a woman who wants to receive from her husband. However, if we remember the class we're learning on Thursday nights, it's the class that's called the symbiosis of body and soul. So at the beginning we discussed that in order to have a yichud between Yesod and Malchus, remember we were learning about Jonathan, Yonasan, and David, and Shaul, and there has to first be an enlightenment to Yesod from Bina. Bina has to give the crown. Like it says, B'yom Chatunosai, on the day of his marriage, his mother gives him a crown. And that's the secret of Shabbos. Shabbos is the day that Yesod is filled with Bina light. Bina shines into Yesod. When Bina shines into Yesod, what happens? Yesod now has tremendous amount of energy, and he releases this energy to his wife. He shares this energy with Malchus, and that's why Malchus is in a state of satisfaction. So Shabbos is related to Malchus. That Malchus is in an satiated state, but that's because Yesod is intimate with her, and that's because in Yesod is shining the lights of Bina. So Shabbos, there's a certain formula to Shabbos that connects Bina to Yesod and Yesod to Malchus. Together it creates Shabbos, which is very interesting because we know that in Judaism, according to Kabbalah, the right and holiest and most apropos appropriate time for a husband and a wife to share intimacy is on Friday night, is on Shabbos. The sages say that Oynes Talmidei Chachamim, that the scholars who study Torah all week long, their time in which they have their obligations, it's actually an obligation for a man to be with his, to give his wife an intimacy. So that is once a week. Again, there's certain measures according to halacha, how much one is, obviously depending on the woman as well, but there is certain laws of how much is a minimal obligation. So for people who study Torah all the time, it's no less than once a week, which is on Friday night, not any time. And according to Kabbalah, it explains that that's the time to draw down, especially if you want to bring children into the world. That's the time to bring down very holy souls and so on and so forth. So that's the time. So it makes sense because the entire energy of Shabbos spiritually is Malchut receiving from Yesod, and Yesod, in order to deliver to Malchus, needs to receive from his mother, which is from Bina. So that's the energy of Shabbos. So now we can understand how it plays out in this story. That Abba goes to Kaputka together with Yosi. Together they create Shabbos. Isn't this great? In you look in Parshas, in the writings of the Arizal, in this week's Torah portion, Parshas Kedoshim, you'll see you'll see that Shabbos is the King Hadar. Remember we said earlier the King Hadar is Yosef, Yesod? So there he also explained, in other words, that Hadar, Shabbos is related to Hadar. And what did we say earlier? That Kaputka is Hadar together with Ma'atabel. Hadar is inside Kaputka. So it all makes sense how this all comes together. Very good. Visham, and over there, Oya Reb Samloi. Reb Samloi was there. Now it's interesting. He says Reb Samloi. That's why I said earlier that Reb Samloi was in Kaputka. Even though in the story, I don't know where Reb Samloi was in Kaputka. They met this person on the road to Kaputka who told them a story with a mark, who told them about how he got the mark to begin with. This injury was because he was once in an inn, and over there Reb Samloi was there. So I don't know what he means over here when he says, and over there, which seems to be in Kaputka. In the Zohar, it doesn't say that the injury happened in Kaputka. It says that they encountered this person. It could be this injury happened many years earlier. Especially it implies that way, because it says this guy, every day I'm doing tshuva and I'm washing my face. It seems like this was a long regimen. It doesn't seem like he started doing it 2 days before he started brushing his teeth 2 days earlier. It seems like this has been an old story that he's doing this. But for some reason, the Rebbe's father pins Reb Samloi also to Kaputka. And now we make sense, because for Shammai, Reb Samloi is over there, because Shammai Moira al B'chinas Yesod. His name, the name Samloi, it's all in his name. You can see that he is a energy of Yesod, similar to Yosef. Samloi. Why? Ki Samloi u'maloshin simla. Samloi comes from the word simla, garment. Now, who do we see had a special relationship with garments, with clothing? You see Rabbi Yossi. Not Rabbi Yossi, Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik, who is Joseph, who is the ultimate embodiment of Yesod in the Torah, the male Yesod. You see that he's very, very, very much associated with clothing. Beginning with his father, that his father made for him a special beautiful coat. And we see that when he was later, he doesn't bring it over here. We see later that when he's in Egypt and he has this big sexual test with a woman, with his wife of his, wants him to commit adultery with her. And what happens? He doesn't want to. She grabs him by his garment. And he leaves the garment and he runs away without the garment, but he leaves his robe by her and he escapes. So you see that a lot of Yosef's life is involving these garments, because Yesod is related to garment, as he's going to explain soon. It's connected to the shirt that is of Yosef. Pchenas Yesod. Ksiven, it says, There's another. It says oita or kasalma. It says God wraps himself in light like a garment. What does it have to do with Yesod? What is God wrapping in light? Because or light is particularly connected to Yosef. Connects again to the class I gave 2 nights ago. We spoke about that or and tov is the same light, is the numeric, is the same idea of tov. That's when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, and it says she saw he was good, he was tov, and the room was filled with light. And we said there are 5 times or, which represent the 5 times tov, the 5 times of this year. We spoke 5 times 17, 85. So or is particularly connected. Someone who is holy and has a rectified yesod is not sinning with his yesod, as a perfect sexual, clean sexually, that person exudes a spiritual light. Like it says, Oyer Zarua la Tzadik. That light is planted in the Tzadik. Now we know that a person is called a Tzadik, particularly when he is, the word Tzadik is particularly reserved for someone who is who has the holy, his yesod, the element of his sexual side, is very pure. Like we find this idea that the tzaddik is related to Yitzod. First of all, it says, Imru tzaddik ki tov. Praise the tzaddik. Imru also means praise. Praise the tzaddik because he is tov. Tov, we said earlier, is the numeric value 17. 17 is the energy of Yesod. Goodness. Okay? So, tzaddik is, and we also find that from all of our saintly biblical figures, we don't refer to anybody as tzaddik. Abraham is not called Abraham our tzaddik. Abraham is called Abraham our father. Isaac is also called our father. Jacob is also called our father. Moses is called our teacher. Aaron, who's one of the great, right? He's called the priest. King David, who's another one of the great giants, is called our king. Who is called the tzaddik, the saint? Yosef HaTzadik. Because Yosef is Yesod, and Yesod is tzaddik. Okay. Now, regarding tzaddik, it says, Oyer Zaru ala tzaddik. That in tzaddik there is light. Now it says, so you have to put together the dots. It says, Oita Oyer, that God wraps himself in light, kasalma, like a garment. That means the light is the garment. And since light is related to the light of Yesod, so that's the connection of why Rebbe Samlai, who is called garment, Samlai, from the word Simla, that means he probably had, his soul was garbed in light. Samlai wasn't just a regular garment, a garment of light. Oyer ubchenas Yesod. Oyer is Yesod. K'moshakasav Oyer zarua ala tzaddik. The tzaddik ubchenas Yesod. And tzaddik is the element of Yesod. K'moshakasav, like it says, and there's actually a verse, the tzaddik Yesod olam. The tzaddik is the foundation of the world. But it uses the word tzaddik Yesod. Yesod is tzaddik. Vayim bakdamas hazoyer HaKadosh, taf aleph amid aleph. Binyan Oyer di izbarer. Oh, look at this. In the Zohar, it says clearly what I was teaching the other day. I didn't even notice this. It says the light that was created on the first day, the izganis, it was hidden where? The iskalel, and it became included, the bris, in the circumcision, in the bris. The bris is the yesod. That's where you do the bris, on the organ, on the male organ. And that's where you do the bris. That's where God hid the great light. So someone who keeps themselves sexually very holy and very clean has this great light. It's also interesting that the concept of tzaddik, remember we said, I spoke again in the class, there's a lot of interconnection in between this class and what we learned on Monday. We discussed that the next one who this great light, the light of the first day of creation, was revealed by, was the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov brings Hasidism to the world, but one of the core principles of Hasidism was that they introduced the Tzadik to the world. Tzadik. That means there were saintly people before, but they weren't so much referred to. We didn't call them tzaddikim. They were great rabbis, they were gaonim, they were whatever the names were. Roshi yeshivas, tanoim, amaroim, tzaddikim. That's a Hasidic. It became very much intertwined with the Hasidic movement. Why? Because the Baal Shem Tov is associated with this hidden light, and he's associated with Yesod. And I'll prove it to you in many ways. I said in last class that the Baal Shem Tov revealed himself. First of all, he was a hidden tzaddik, and then he revealed himself, like Yesod. And you look at the Yesod, the organ of Yesod is also first covered. There's a foreskin. Then you remove it, and then the hidden light comes out. Mila is Gematria 85, 5 times Tov. It's all the light of the bris. Very powerful, godly light. So the Baal Shem Tov was revealed when? In 1740. Actually, he was the actual revelation of the Baal Shem Tov began to reveal himself was 1733. But 1740 on the Hebrew calendar is the year 5500, which is daybreak of Friday, based on the principle that every 1,000 years is another day. So there's 500 years of night, 500 years of day. So from 1240 to 2240, which we haven't reached yet, is the 6th millennium, the Hebrew 6th millennium, which is the Friday of time, which begins with Thursday night and then Friday. So the daybreak of Friday is when the Baal Shem Tov revealed himself. Now we know that the sixth millennium, this is corresponding to Yesod, because Yesod is the 6th sphere. So that's why Tzadikim, which is particularly the energy of Yesod, were revealed to the world. And these Tzadikim were meant to rectify all the sins. Part of their work, that's why people felt because people, obviously one of the biggest challenges for many people is the element of holiness and keeping themselves clean sexually, because there's that's one of the strongest temptations that have been plaguing humanity from the beginning of time. And one of the deep elements of where Hasidim would go to a Rebbe was to help them rectify and purify in the element. And the tzaddik themselves, similar to the story over here, that Reb Abba does the rectification, Reb Samlai does the rectification, because they're the energy of Yesod. But there's another element. The concept of Yesod is bonding. That's the sexual energy. We find for the first time in history that tzaddikim, that the people, the Hasidim and the Rebbe bond with such a deep connection. There's a deep love, there's an attraction, there's a powerful attachment of Rebbe Chassid. It's the holy bonding of Yesod. It's almost like a romantic, God forbid, not for anybody to take this in a perverted way. It was almost like a romantic bond between Rebbe Hasidim, because it's the holy energy of Yesod that that the concept from the Baal Shem Tov and onward, it didn't exist earlier. It's a new phenomenon. But everything has a biblical example. Yosef was the first one who personified it, and of course the word tzaddikim throughout history that stood out. But the era of tzaddikim began with the Baal Shem Tov on the Friday of time, which is in the 6th millennia, when daybreak happens. In the nighttime, you don't really see it. In the daybreak, that's when these tzaddikim, God rolls out these great tzaddikim to the world. Or Zarua la tzaddik. And it's interesting, you will note that Hasidic Rebbes, they dressed with special garments. They had many of them dressed in white, and they wore their shtreimel, and it was like there was the other great rabbis, you didn't find something like the Hasidic rabbis were always distinct in the way they dressed, because again, it's associated with garment. It's associated with Okay, the ayin bagdamas azoyra kadosh tafalav hamadal being oiri kevis kalba, but it's fine. Oita or kasalma, and the light is salma. Salmo b'chinas yisoid is yisoid. Umi yisoid nimshach smolois, and garments come from the element of yisod. Kamashakasa be Yosef. In another connection of Joseph, that Yosef is the producer of a samla, of a salma of a garment. It says regarding Yosef that he gave, after he reunited with his brothers, actually before he reunited with them, when the brothers came to him in Egypt and he made a big party and they still didn't know who he was, it says that he sits them all and he gives them gifts. Lekulam, to all of them, he gave them chalifos smolois, a exchange of clothes. He gave them new garments to wear. He gave them a gift of a new robe. And to Binyamin, he gave him 5 robes, 5 chalifos smolois. But you see that it's Yosef who's giving garments, and that's not just because he had a shop. he worked in, he had the garment industry in Egypt. He had some factories over there. It's because spiritually he was connected to it. He gave to each one in exchange of clothing. He gave 5. Maybe the 5 smolis to Binyamin is related to giving. Binyamin, by the way, is Malchus. To him, he gives 5, maybe related to the 5. I'm not going to get into it. It's connected to what we learned. But the concept that he wants to bring over here is that Samla and Salma is connected to Yisod. And therefore, Reb Samla'i, who has the name Samla or Simla in his name, connected to him. Now, to make it even stronger, Samla'i, the word Samla'i, Gematria. Let's do the Gematria of the name Samla'i. Let's crunch some numbers here. Samla'i, 340 plus 31 plus 10. Okay, Samla'i is 381. Now, that's what he's going to do over here. If Samla'i is Yesod, he's going to show you in the divine names how his name equals a number that literally is the function of Yesod in the God's names. So we know like this. Havaya, there's 2 names, two primary names in Hashem. Is the name the Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is 26, and Adna, which is 65. Now, Aleph Daled Nun Yud is the name of God associated with Malchut. We said earlier that Malchut is associated with the name of Elokim. That's true, but Malchus is also called Aleph Daled Nun Yud because Aleph Daled Nun Yud means Adon, master, and that's Malchut. Malchus is the master of the world. Fine. Yud Kei, which is the feminine element of God, the Malchut. The male element of God, the Ze'er Anpin, the male element is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Okay. He's going to show us now what's the function of Yesod. Yesod, which is the male reproduction, right? Its function is to connect male and female. So its function is to bond in the divine names. It's to bond Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the name of the male side, to Aleph Daled Nun Yud. So he's going to show you how Samla'i incorporates within itself these 2 names of Havaya and Adna. Let's see how. Bahakofel kol ois al chaverei. It's when you times each one by its fellow. What does that mean? You take Yud, which is the first letter of the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the tetragrammaton Yud Kei Vav Kei. You take the Yud and you take the aleph of Adna, and you make one times the other. So what we need to do over here is we need a line, Yud Kei Vav Kei. It would be good if I had a blackboard or a whiteboard, whatever it is. And if I would line it up over here, let's put horizontal. Imagine in your head, Yud Kei Vav Kei, line them up. And on the other side, put Aleph, Dalid, Nun, Yud. And now we're going to times each letter by the corresponding letter. So Yud times Aleph. So Yud is 10 and Aleph is 1. So Yud times Aleph is 1 times 10, which is 10. Okay, so let's put the number 10. Let's continue. Hey, Pamim Dalet. The next letter in Yud Kei Vav Kei is a Hey. And in the Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud is a Dalet. So Hey times Dalet, 5 times 4 is 20. Okay, so now we have 10 and 20 together, 30. Let's keep it, okay? The next one, Yud Kei Vav, holding the third line, is a Vav. Over here is a Nun. Vav is 6 and Nun is 50. Vav times Nun, which is 6 times 50, is 300. So how much do we have now? 330. Remember? Good. And then last one, Yud Kei Vav. What's the fourth line? Hey. On the other side, what's Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud? Is a Yud. So, which is 10. 5 times 10 is 50. So, what do we have over here? Yeah, 330 plus 50 is 380. What did we say is Samlai, the numeric value? 381. So that's why he says, Samlai is the same numeric value, but you have to add 1, which is called with the kola, which in Gematria, you always do that. It can be off by 1, and then you add 1, which is the word itself. So Samlai is the same numeric value as Havaya Adna, but not you have to get to it in an indirect way. You times the letters one next by each other, which is one of the Gematria ways to use in divine names. So you see how Samlai is Yesod, because Yesod's job is to connect male and female, Havaya and Adna together. Who be Yesod? And this is in Yesod. Hamachaber Havaya and Adna, that connects Havaya and Adna. Ikeyadua be'inyan. Another name that is associated with Yesod is the name Shalom. Anybody that has the name Shalom, which means peace, that name is a name corresponding to Yesod. Be'inyan Shalom shebe Yesod. That Shalom is a name of Yesod. She'im daled oisi yosav hu hamispar hazeh. If you take the word Shalom, which we know is Yesod, because Yesod makes peace between man and woman. It's the bonding. Peace is the unification of two things. So, and therefore we know, for example, Pinchas, famous story when Pinchas became zealous, and he killed this prince of the tribe of Shimon, who was cohabitating with this Midianite woman. So there was a sexual sin that was going on. Pinchas stood up and he killed them. God says, I am giving you my bris, which bris, by the way, is connected to Yesod. I'm giving you my bris of peace, brisi shalom, because he did a rectification in the element of Yesod. That's where the pagam was, that's where the blemish was taking place, and he rectified it. And that's why he's given this. So shalom and many other reasons, shalom is Yesod. So when we do the numeric value of shalom, Shalom is 376. Shin is 300, Lamed and Mem is 70, Vav 376. Then when you take the word Shalom and you add the 4 letters, instead of adding the word, you add 4, because you're adding Shin, Lamed, Vav, Men, you get 380. So you see that Shalom, which is Yesod, is Gematria on some level, 380, which is the same Gematria as the word Samlai. So you see that Reb Samlai, he's the energy of Yesod. And another word, he says, if you take the word, not just shalom, but you say bishalom, like ba'i bishalom, bishalom, in peace, and you take the word bishalom, and you rearrange the letters, you get the word malbish, which malbish is the same idea of a samla. Malbish means a garment. Like malbushe Shabbos, the garments of Shabbos. Malbish is a garment. So, v'hainu. So this is all indicates, all giving you all this information to pin Rabbi Samlai to the element of Yesod. And that's the reason also why Rabbi Samlai is going to be thrown into the mix over here. And he is the one who's going to do the first aid for this fellow who's got a fall, who's got sadly he fell through. He sinned in a sexual sin, and the person who's there immediately to give him first aid is Reb Samlai, because he's related. And where is this? In Kaputka, which is the energy of Yesod. Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Yossi, they're just coming in from the side to help out over here, as we'll soon see. And this is also the meaning of a verse. The beginning of the verse that we said earlier, we said, Oita or kasalma, that God wraps himself in light, kasalma, like a garment. The beginning of that verse this is all in Psalm 104. It says, Hoid v'hadar lavashta, Oita or kasalma, glory and splendor you dress. Oita or, you wrap yourself in light, kasalma, like a garment. So he explains the entire verse. Hoid v'hadar lavashta hu netzach and hoid. Hod is Hod, and Hadar is Netzach. It's interesting because earlier we related the word Hadar with Yesod, but for whatever reason in this verse, Hod is Hod and Hadar is Netzach. The Lavashta, you dressed yourself as Netzach and Hod. Oita or Kasalma, you wrap yourself in light like a garment. Yesod, that's Yesod. Noita Shamayim Kayariya Taferes. The beginning, and then it continues. You spread out the heaven like a carpet, like a urea, like a curtain. That's referring to Teferes, because Teferes is called Shamayim. So he's basically giving you how all the Sfirot are mentioned. Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Teferes are all mentioned together in this verse. If you have a Cabalistic reading of that verse. And who says that verse? He's now going to say King David says that verse. Because King David is the personification of the Malchut. And Malchut is the female recipient. She receives input primarily from her husband Yesod, but not only from the Yesod. Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Teferes are the main downloaders who download energy into Malchut. And that's why King David is saying this verse. V'amar zed David, and David says, Shahayar Merkava Lamidas HaMalchus. He's saying this as a parenthetical, because but David, who is the chariot to the attribute of Malchus, he says that Al Bechinasai, on his level. And that's why he begins, Hashem Elokai, God, my God, which means the God of Malchut, the God who's infusing me with energy, he's giving me life. Shekai ala Malchus. It's referring to Malchus. Hashem Elokai, my godliness, which is Malchus. Shu Elokai de David, who's the energy of King David. What's the Elokai? Hashem Elokai, my God, Malchus. Where is it receiving from? Hoid v'hadar levashta is Netzach and Hod. Humashem mekabelas benetzach v'hod. It's receiving from Netzach and Hod. Shehem chastei David hane'emonim. These are explained elsewhere. These are the powers of Chesed that flow to David, come from Netzach and Hod. Oita or kasalma. You wrap yourself in light like a garment. Humashem mekabelas is this that Malchus is receiving. Min or zaru al Tzadik. From the light that's planted to the Tzadik, that's from Yesod, the Yesod of Yesod. And that's why it's called Oita Oir is light, which is Yesod. Noita Shamayim, you spread out the heavens, that's Teferes, because Teferes is a blend. Shamayim, it says in Shamayim is made up of Eish and Mayim. So it's Chesed and Gevura. Which Sphira is balanced? Chesed and Gevura, that's Teferet. So Noita Shamayim Kayiriyo Moshe Mekabeles mit Teferes. Is this that Malchut is receiving from Teferes? Hanikra Shamayim, that's called Shamayim. Hikoy Masa, because her stature, whose stature? Malchut, she's the woman, she stands opposite her husband, and she's primarily receiving from these four Sefirot. Chesed and Gevura are too high for her. She doesn't receive. They're above her head. They're above her pay grade. She's receiving from Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod. And that's the reason why King David, who is this, speaking on behalf of his sole source, Malchut, and he's saying from where she receives, he's mentioning these 4 levels. Lenega Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, Deza, of the Ze'er Anpin, ki yidua as it is known. V'higdim hoid v'ha, but now he's a little disturbed, not disturbed, he's challenged by the order. The order seems to be a little bit out of order. It should have started with the Tiferes, because that's the highest. Then Netzach and Hod, and then Yisod. But if you look at the order, you see, in the way King David mentions these verses, he says, Hoid v'hadar lavashta, which is Netzach and Hod first, or Hod and then Netzach. Hod is Hod, and Hadar is Netzach. So it's, okay. Then comes Yisod. Oita or kasalma. He spreads out or like a garment, so that's Yisod, which that makes sense. But then afterwards he jumps up higher, Noita Shamayim Kiro. Why in that order? So he explains. V'higdim hoid v'hadar netzach v'oid la'or. V'shamay to or and Shamayim, Yisod v'teferes. To Yisod and Teferes. Ki malchus, because that's the order Cabalistically. Again, this is not... These are side notes. They're not so important for the general gist of it. If you're not getting all of it, it's okay. Ki malchus mekabel, it's a Kabbalistic idea. Ki malchus mekabelas tchilas hachasadim and netzach v'hod. Malchus first receives the powers of chesed from netzach and hod. They build the malchus up first. V'achakach mi yisod, and afterwards from yisod. V'achakach mi teferes, and afterwards from teferes. Ki gemar knisas hareviyah ha'achrei da chatzi shlish or the teferes bekesa malchus uli b'soif. Because the last quarter of the half of the third of the light of Teferes that goes into the crown of Malchus, a very Kabbalistic idea, that happens in the end. After she's filled with the lights of the lower spheros, she gets a higher infusion into her crown from the Teferes, but that comes in last. Again, I don't want to go to it. Number one, because I don't know what he's saying. I would have to look it up. And number two, it seems to be a little bit off topic. I am b'Mishnas Chasidim, Mesechtes Katnes Rachel, v'Tirish Akenu. Look in that Kabbalistic work, and you will see that so it is. Fine. Okay, now back to the topic. Samlai. The word Samlai, Gematria, is... Now we're going to connect. Now, once we know that Samlai is Yesod, let's connect them particularly to Kaputka, which we said is also Yisod. We've proved Samlai because garment is connected to Yosef, and we've said the name Samlai is the same name as is related to the name Shalom, and it's related to Havaya Adna, and all this, which is all explaining how it's related to Yisod. But now we have to connect it to Kaputka. Now, indirectly, it's connected to Kaputka because Kaputka is Yisod. But now he wants to make a direct connection between Samlai and Kaputka. So he says, Kaputka, which is, remember we said the numeric value of Kaputka is 306. Together with the word Mila. Mila, we've been learning all this week. Mila is 85. So 306 plus 85. Three 06 plus 85, 391. Now let's do the Gematria of Samlai, the numeric value of Samlai. I can trust them, but let's just do it. Shin is 300. Mem and Lamed is 70. Aleph and Yud is 11. It's 381. So I got earlier. Oh, yeah, I remember when I was doing the math, I got stuck. Because he says Kaputkia and Mila is numeric value 3, the same like Samlai. Samlai is 381, but Kaputkia and Mila is 391. And I got stuck. I didn't know where he's dropping a yud. So somewhere he drops a yud, and I don't know why. Somewhere he drops a yud, and I don't know why. Because earlier we did Kaputka. Kaputka, we said clearly is 306. 306 plus 385 plus 85 is 391. Samloi is only 381. We did that earlier. So I'm not sure where the 10 gets dropped. Okay, I have a question. It's okay. Later, there's another Gematria that I'm racking my head, which seems to be off by 100, exactly by 100, which I don't know. Okay. Vihine. Let's continue. When Rabbi Abi and Rabbi Yossi were going to Kaputka, they met this person, they saw this person coming. Mashman implies this person seems to have a special connection to Kaputka. What's his connection? This that we say Kaputka is indicative of Yesod, like we discussed earlier, that the place, the energy of the place is Yesod, doesn't mean it's holy Yesod. It can be a sexual perversion. Because Yesod is Yesod. When we don't know, depending. A place could be, two places can be related to the same spiritual energy, but one could be in holiness and one can be in non-holiness. Now, Kaputka happens to be Yesod, but not a holy Yesod. Where do we see that? Because Kaputka, we said earlier, is the city of Kaftor. Now, Kaftor was a son of Egypt, the son of the fellow named Mitzrayim. And we know the Egyptians were very perverse in their sexuality. That's why Egypt is called in the Torah, Er Vasa Aretz, the nakedness of the world. And we know that when Abraham went down to Egypt, they snatched his wife away. And from all places in the world, they were very, very, very impure. And Pharaoh says to him, don't stay here another night because someone is going to snatch your wife. Someone is going to commit adultery. Someone is going to rape her. Egypt was a very, very, very perverted, particularly in sexuality, sexual sins. So this Kaputka, which is Kaftor, which is one of the sons of Egypt, this was not a holy Yesod. And Kaputka Eretz Yisrael. It's not part of the Holy Land. It's outside of there. Shu Sitra the Kedusha, which is a side of holiness. Ki Kaftar, because Kaftar, whom b'nei Mitzrayim, he's one of the sons of Egypt, of the first person called Mitzrayim, who was the father of Egypt. Parshas Noach, Mitzrayim Yolad, and Mitzrayim gave birth to Es Kaftorim, to Kaftar. Mitzrayim, and we know that the Mitzrayim in particular, Shtufim Bezima, they were very promiscuous in Egypt. Very big sin. Comes out. Kaputkia, who mepchinas Yesod. He's the element of Yesod, but the klipa of the unholy Yesod, of the impure of the klipa. That's why this person who's struggling with impure sexual desires, like we see in the story, was hanging out in Kaputkia. Im shuhu Yisrael. So even though he himself was Jewish, so it's from his holy soul, he belongs, right? But he stumbled in a sin that was of incestuous nature. It was in that place. He himself, by virtue of his soul, has a holy soul, but he blemished his power of Yesod, the Yesod the Kedusha, and the Yesod element of holiness. And that's why they saw him in that road. V'Reb Simloi, and now he says in the parentheses, Reb Simloi shu mibchinas Yesod the Kedusha. Reb Simloi, who particularly is the energy of the holy energy of foundation of Yesod, but of holiness, who didn't blemish Yesod, but he's a Tzadik, al derech aksoines pasim de Yosef, as we said earlier, is related to the shirt of Yosef, Sheshamar Brisai, who he protected and guarded his sexual self. He was the one who was needed to fix him. He was the one who applied first aid. Tikkun oisai b'tshuvusai shesidirloi. Gave him a rectification. Now, even though he didn't complete the rectification that we're going to see soon, but at least he initiated the rectification. V'simloi dafka. P'chinas beged v'levush tikein. It was, and who did the tikkun? Who gave him the first aid? It was Simloi, who in his name is implying a garment, who's doing the tikkun. Why? Because the first person who does it, a complete rectification of Yesod, is Yosef. Where and how? Related to a garment. She grabs him by the garment, and he flees, and he leaves the garment, which means that related to the garment, he's using the garment and in the process of guarding his holiness. She tries to drag him in with his garment, ensnare him with the garment, but what happens? It says, he let her hold on to the garment and just slid out of the garment, went out of his robe and went running outside. Yosef had the test in his garment. And that's why we also find that one of the great descendants of Joseph, who God wanted to give him really greatness, but he falls terribly, you find that God also reaches for him and grabs him by his garment. Who's that? He is Yeravam ben Nevat. Who's Yeravam ben Nevat? Yeravam ben Nevat is the first king after the Jewish kingdom divides, and it becomes the kingdom of the north, which are the kings of the ten tribes, versus the kingdom of the south, which is the continuation of the Davidic kingdom, Rechavam, the son of King Solomon. So there's this fellow called Yeravam. He was an incredible, great, enormous person, but then he becomes an enormous sinner. But before he sins, it says that God grabbed him by his garment. It says in Tractate Sanhedrin, in Perek Chelek, it says over there, God grabs Yeravam by his lapel, by his garment. I guess this is after he already sinned. He says, please do repentance. God wants him to repent. He grabs him by the garment. Why by the garment? Because he's a descendant of Yosef. And the energy of Yosef, of tshuva, lies in the garment. God wanted the tshuva to be through his garment. And this is similar to the idea. So he's connecting this all. Why Reb Samlai, whose name implies garment, who's from the element of Yesod, is the one needed over here to fix this guy's blemish, as he still will explain. But this idea that tshuva is related to garment is hinted to somewhere else. It says when Esav, when Jacob wears Esav's clothing, Esau's garments, pretending to be his brother Esav, it says that Isaac smelled the fragrance of his garments. And he says, it smells like paradise. And that inspired him to bless. So the Midrash says that the word begadav on Esav's garments, simply it's because of Jacob. The fragrance came from Jacob because Jacob was a holy Tzadik and he created this holy fragrance. But Esav really had a very, smelled from it, from purgatory. So he says later when Esau came in, the real Esav came in, he smelled the smell of purgatory. He couldn't stand it, Isaac. But the verse says it was the smell of the garment. The garment was Esav's garments, not Jacob. Yaakov is only wearing it now, but it's really, that means there's a good smell in Esav's garment. So the Midrash says that the word begadav comes from the word begdav, which means certain sinners who will come from Esav, and then they will do teshuvah. And through the teshuvah that they will do, the repentance that they will do, that will create this incredible good smell. So the sages say, Reach begdav is the sin. I'm sorry, it's not descendants of Esav. I made a mistake. it's descendants of Yaakov who are going to be on the side of Esau, which means they're going to sin. They're going to become wicked like Esau. But then they're going to do tshuva. It means that Yitzchak smelled the power of Balei Tshuva, of penitence that came from Yaakov. When it says begadav, it means bogdav. But what do you see from here? That clothing and bogadim are related to tshuva. Bogdav shema bogdav kesheyasu b'tshuva yi achrei tov. From those who are bogdav means betrayed, those who betray God, which is also the same word as beged, as garment. When they do tshuva, it has a good smell. Kama Yosef, and the Midrash over there brings an example of two sinners, and both of them did tshuva. And the Midrash says that's the smell that Isaac smelled. Who are these two sinners? I didn't look up the story now, but he brings over here one of his name is Yosef Meshisa, who was once a big sinner and he did tshuva. And the second one is Yakum Ish Tzeroros, a fellow by the name of Yakum Ish Tzeroros. What the story is, we would have to look up the story, and I don't know what the story is. Both of them did tshuva. But he's already playing with these names. These are the names that the Midrash says is what Isaac is smelling hundreds of years in advance. He's smelling the smell of the tshuva that they did, relating to the garments. He wants to connect it all to Joseph because Joseph is the man of the garment. So he says, the first one, his name is Yosef. The first Balei Tshuva that is mentioned over there, his name was Yosef. And not only that, his second name is Meshisa. Simply means he came maybe from a place called Yosef Meshisa, known by, usually they call people by the name of their cities. But the word Shisa comes from the word Shin Yud Saf, which is Shis, which means six. Which we know Yosef is connected, he's the sixth Tzadik. He's related to the sixth attribute, emotional attribute, which is foundation, which is Yesod, which is bonding, which is the one that we're talking about. So Yosef Meshisa, that's one person who Isaac is smelling through the garments. Second one, his name is Yakum Ish Tzeruras. He's going to explain. Yosef is B'chinas Yesod. V'hainu Meshisa. Shisu Yesod. Sfira Hashish is the sixth one. Yakum, the name Yakum is the same numeric value as Yosef. The first guy, it's easy. His name is Yosef. But even the second guy, his name is Yakum, he right away says, well, he's Yosef too. Why? Because Yosef is numeric value of Yosef is 156. Let's look at the name Yakum. 156. Yeah. Gematria Yosef. Vu ish tzeroros. And about him, it says he was a man of tzeroros. Tzeroros comes from the word, can mean pebbles. I don't know why he was called the man of tzeroros, the man of pebbles, I'm not sure. But tzeroros also comes from the word wrapping, to wrap things, to bundle things up. Now, what did we learn? Yesod, the business of Yesod is to bond male and female. So therefore, he's called tzeroros because he bonds together Za and Malchus. Havaya Adnak, Kamoiki Kol Bashamayim V'aretz, which Kol is Yesod because it connects heaven and earth. Gam Tzeroros is also the word Tzeroros, Yurmez Aleya V'Arachel, also refers to the two females. Hatreina Hey and Shebeshem, the two hays of the name, which we said before that Yesod bonds the two hays because Bina flows into Yesod and Malchus receives from Yesod. They both plug in there, and therefore, yeah, Bina and Malchus Yesod Mechaber Oisam. Like we said earlier, Atav is give us Oilam. Okay, fine. I am Bezeira Kadosh Parshas Ve'ered of Chav Beis Amadal Parshas Achrei. Lochein, therefore, again, this was all parenthetical. Reb Simlai, Dafka, he's the one who Sidr Loi Tshuvasai. He's the one who's going to do first aid over here to give this person a tshuva. Now we'll continue every little detail over here. This sin that happened to him was when he was in a certain inn. He stopped in a motel and then with his sister and he sinned with her. Okay. Ushpiza shehi malon, a shpiza, which is a hotel. Malon orchim, it's a place where guests stay. It's a guest house. That's also Yisod. See, you have to realize that you have many, many phenomena that all connect to the same sphere, the same attribute. Hotels are also the energy. When you go to a hotel, you're in a place of Yisod. And that can be kiyadu, as it is known. Sha'oirach. What is a hotel? A place for guests. The concept of a guest. Yisod is called a guest. Why? Sha'orach ubchenas Yisod. Orach is Yisod. Like it says, Orach tzadikim ka'or noiga. There's a verse that says, the way of tzadikim, and a guest is someone usually is a traveler. So Orach tzadikim means the travels of tzadikim. Ka'or noiga is like a shining light. Hoylech va'or, it just gets brighter and brighter. Sha'or ubchenas Yisod. We said before that light is related to Yisod. Kanal ba'oita or kasama, like we said, and he wraps himself in light like a garment. And that's why we also find that tzaddikim, whenever a good Hasidic story, always has that the Baal Shem Tov was on the road. He went into his wagon and he traveled somewhere. Reb Zush and Rabbi Melech were traveling and they were on the road and they went somewhere. It seems like tzaddikim, they hit the roads a lot. Because again, the road, the derech, traveling, is related to Yesod. Tzaddikim, who are, as we discussed earlier, primarily that the concept of tzaddik is Yesod. Now, even though he's going to say over here that Reb Abba and Reb Yossi, who they particularly, Reb Abba is Bina and Reb Yossi is Malchus, but they were also tzaddikim. So that's why one of the things they were on the road. They were traveling on the road. Now, what's a guest? So anything that's related to a road is related to Yesod. A gas station, a motel, these are all road, these are all travel. It belongs to the world of travel. So travel, which is the road, is related to. And we know that, for example, Yesod is also called derech. Derech gever, the way of a man, which is referring to man's sexual drive. It's called the way of a man. Derech is related, a way, traveling, it's all. And that's why it says that people get particularly tested in sexual matters when they're not at home and they're traveling. Traveling, and people have to be very careful, primarily during traveling, because traveling is an energy of Yesod. Same as on the other side. The way of the wicked is in the dark. The way of a tzaddik is in light. Light is when there is a pure Yesod. When the Yesod is damaged, that's darkness. That's why this sin that the person did over here happened at night in the motel. The opposite of light, which is tzaddikim's way. Now, a motel particularly is called, or hotel is called ushpiza. He's going to look into the word ushpiza and find the relationship of ushpiza, which is a guest house, which again, related to guests, related to a place for travelers, a travel station, a lodging place for travelers, is related to Yesod. Ushpiza, who is the word Eish Paz. You hear the two words Eish Paz. What does that mean? Eish is Gevura. Eish is fire, is Gevura. Paz is called Yesod. Yesod, one of the names for Yesod is called Paz. Why? Where do we have Paz with Yesod? Paz is really, in Hebrew, a type of gold, a reddish gold. Now, Now, he doesn't say so much that Puz is Yesod. He says Puz is Gevura. Now, let's understand something. Sexuality, the sexual drive, is very much related to Gevura, the fire. What's passion? Passion is fire. Excitement is fire. So the turning on sexually is the Gevura of Yesod. And so Ushpiza, which is hotel, which is guest house, is particularly connected to this fire. I guess that's why people can have particular sexual desire. They should use it in a holy way, in a godly way. But a hotel, a travel place, facilitates that. It's interesting you get this information as you're learning over here. The word ushpiza is eish paz. Eish, fire, is gevura. Paz is red gold. Now, let's understand something. Silver and gold. Two metallics. Silver is kindness, the energy of kindness. That's why it's a watercolor. And gold is the energy of fire. It's fiery color. And especially red gold, which is puz gold, which is reddish in the fire. It's got even more intensity to it. Ube Yosef's ksiv. And by Yosef it says, Vayefoizu zeroyais yadav. It says that when Yosef held back, and he desired her so much, he wanted to sin so much, he was overtaken. It says she made him crazy for a year. That's what it says. She did all, the Midrash tells us how for an entire year, she was busy seducing him. And it didn't work. She even put a knife. He would try to look down when she would dress in a very seductive way. She would make him do work in front in her and where she was. She would dress very seductively. But he would look down. He wouldn't look at her. So she put a knife under his. She attached a neck brace with a knife that he couldn't put his head down because it would tear in. That's the Midrash says crazy thing she did. Finally, after a year of driving him insane, she almost got to him on that day. Last minute, it says his vision of his father came to him, and he was able to refrain and just run. He ran away from the sin. So when it says when he held back, the verse says Vayefoizu zraya yadav. Actually, it says that his sexual desire, that he was going to have relations with her, that energy was dispelled in his fingers. It says when a person has it's brought in different books of mysticism or Musar books, that when a person has a sexual desire and they want to like calm it down, they should clench their toes in the ground and things, and that will like refrain that. So that's what Yosef did, and it says that energy went from the word Yefoizu Zraya Yadav. That's where the Midrash derives that. But what you can see from here is that puz, which is the word Vayefoizu, has to do with this intense sexual drive. And that's related to the word ushpiza. So ushpiza, hotel, which means a guest house, has within it this eish paz, this fiery sexual energy. Diktik now. So you see how he's connecting. That's why this whole sin is taking place in this hotel. And diktik haloshin, and it's not just a hotel. It's a hotel in Kaputka, which Kaputka is a neighborhood which particularly has that energy. And diktik haloshin bechad ushpiza. It doesn't just say in a hotel. It says in this one hotel. It should have said it happened in an ushpiza. It says in this one place. Hu be'ushpiza hamiyuchad. There's a designated place. Ki harei. Why? We find that on Sukkot, a guest. Some of you might have seen the movie, Israeli movie called Ushpizin, right? Ushpizin really means a guest. And on Sukkot, we have 7 guests. Every day of Sukkot, another one of these spiritual guests come to spend time with us in our Sukkah. First day Abraham, the second day Isaac, Avram, Yitzchak, 6 days Yosef. So we find that all the tzaddikim are called ushpizin. Chad ushpizin means the most designated from all of them. So since ushpizin can apply, he says, to many other energies, you want to emphasize that it's Yosef in particular. That's why it says Shem Zayin Midos. All 7 Midos are sometimes lightly referred to as guests. Hazayin Amudim Sha'olam Oimid Aleim. Because all of them have an element of Yesod to them. The 7 pillars that, remember we say Tzadik Yesod Olam, the Tzadik is the foundation of the world. There are 7 pillars that hold up the world. On a broad level, there are 7 pillars that hold up the world. But in a more detailed level, there's one, and that's the Tzadik. That's the element of Yesod. Ushpiza HaMiyuchad, and the one Ushpiza, who b'chenes Yesod, who b'chenes Ushpiza B'yichod, this is this particular one. Ha'amud Echad, it's the one pillar. Tzadik Yesod Olam, the Tzadik, the foundation of the world. Sha'olam Oimed Olam, the whole world stands on this one Tzadik. V'ayim b'Zohar HaKadosh Parshas Vayeshev Daf Kuv Bavav Amud Aleph. U'ma'ashenirshim sham begilyon b'siyata d'shmayim alamayim b'chad samcha yechidoi. Look over there, which is explains this concept of 7 power, 7 pillars, but there's this one pillar, Ayin Sham. Now this hotel wasn't necessarily this holy Ushpiza. It's Eish, but it's basically saying it was a very, very, very spiritually charged energy of Yesod in this place. So we can understand why the temptation was so strong in this place. Now he takes it further and he says Ushpiza, which has the same, which again means a guest house or a guest, which has the word Eish Paz in it. Also, let's take a look at the numeric value of the word Ushpiza. Gematria, its Gematria is, let's do the Gematria. Before I tell you what is Gematria, let's do the numeric value of the word Ushpiza. Ushpiza's Gematria 306, wait, plus 98. Okay, I got 404. Ushpiza's Gematria 404. What is that in numeric? What does that equal? He says it equals 3 names of God. What are the 3 names of God? Shakai, which is Shin Daled Yud, 314, plus Havaya, which is 26, plus Adna, which is 65. 405. Remember, it can be off by 1. So Ushpiza's Gematria 404, and these 3 names of God are Gematria 405. What's the significance? Havaya, as we spoke earlier, is the male, the general male. Adna is the general female. Malchus. Yesod links Havaya and Adna, like we spoke earlier. The name of God associated with Yesod is Shakai, Shin Daled Yud. On the word Birchas Shadayim, which says in the Torah, the blessing of Shadayim V'Rocham, one of the blessings that are given, I think, by Yaakov. It's given to Yosef, this blessing. Maybe Yaakov gives it to Yosef. He says you should have the blessing of Shadayim and Rocham. Rocham is the womb, is the woman's womb. Shadayim is the male sexuality. He's giving him a blessing that he should have lots of children, that they should be, the men should be blessed and the women should be blessed, to be fertile. That's the blessing. You see from the word Shadayim is related. So Shakai, which is the main 3 letters of the word Shadayim, and there's a lot of explanation why Shakai is the name related to Yesod. So what does Shakai serve? Shakai serves as the Shin, I don't say the name, I'm saying Shakai, but it's really Shin Daled Yud, serves as the Yesod that bonds Havaya and the Malchut. And that's what Ushpiza means. Next time you're booking a hotel, think about all these mystical things. It's not these you see, we look at you can live in the world and see a world as being a world. If you're looking at the world from the eyes of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, every single idea is pure divine energy. Everything is pure mystical energy. And if you could crack the code of things, then you can understand whatever's happening in your life, what's going on, what the road. See what he's connecting over here? Two individuals, two people took a walk. They came and they met a person. He created over here a whole Cabalistic tapestry, literally a whole mosaic of the mystical realms taking place. Rabbi Abba, let's do a little review. Rabbi Abba is Bina. Yossi is Malchus. The two of them are walking together to Kaputka. Kaputka is Kaftar. Kaftar is Yesod. Why are they going there? Because we said the desire of Bina and Malchus are both to Yesod. That's why they're traveling there. And he connected Kaputka to Yesod with all the connections. And then he said Samlai is over there because Samlai, his energy is Yesod. Because Samla garment, Yosef garment, and all these elements of garment all connected to Samlai. Then he goes ahead to explain that that's the reason why this person was going to this Kaputka, because this person obviously was related to this whole business, and a sin that he was going to do was related to this type of a sin. And he's now connecting that Ushpiza, the road, the guest house, and going on the road and traveling, all this is related. Traveling and a hotel where is all Yesod. So all these things are brought into the mix. Okay. And Yesod Chakai Hamachaber Avaya Adna Zohar Malchus. It connects it all together. Now, it doesn't just say Ushpiza, as we said earlier. It said the special Ushpiza, Chad Ushpiza, the hotel, the one hotel. If you take the word Chad and Ushpiza and you unify together, he finds another Gematria. Gematria. So let's see, Ushpiza we said is 404. Let's add the word Chad. Chad is 12. 404 plus 12, 416. I think I was wrong. Let me do Ushpiza again. Ushpiza, I think, was 405. I said 404, but I think it's 405. Let's do the math again. Aleph Vav is 7. Shin is 307. 307. 307 plus 98. Yeah, I was wrong before. I said 404. And then I had to add a Gematria. No. Ushpiza is exactly numeric, is 405. It's the exact numeric value. I stand corrected. Shakai, Havaya, Adna together is exactly 405. Comes out, you have to start with, now Chad is 12. 405 plus 12 is 417. 417 is the exact numeric value of Zayis. Zayis means olives. If we need to throw something else in the loop, olives is a fruit that is Yesod. From the vegetables, which vegetable or which fruit represents Yesod that's why from olives you take shemen. Shemen is oil, but oil is the very essence. Everything has oil. Oil is the essence. Semen, which is the essence of the person, is like the oil of the human being, which creates a child. It's the essence of the person. We also find that Israel is blessed with 7 fruits, 7 special species. There's wheat, barley. The 6th one is olives, Zayas. Because 6, remember, the 7 fruits of Israel correspond to the 7 sfirot. Zayas is Yesod. Now, since a hotel is a traveler place, is related to the Yesod energy, bonding, and Chad Ushpiza, this was a special hotel. So the numeric value of the word Chad Ushpiza is actually Zayas, which is Yesod. It is known that Yesod is related to Zayas. V'kol zeh hu b'kedusha, but that's in holiness. Kamoy can be Yesod l'uma zeh, in the unholy Yesod. Zehusha b'chad ushpiza. That's why in this chad ushpiza, in the unholy Yesod, Sham nichshal biznus, that's where this person sinned, ima choisei Rachmana litzlan, with his sister. And he had this incestual relationship. Now, I'm getting a little tired, and I want to conclude, but I want to finish with the sin. So we can finish and pick up tomorrow, the next class we will give on this. I'm not going to leave you on a cliffhanger, but Ezrat Hashem, and not finish this because we went too deep in. So now we're gonna, but I do want to finish with understanding the dynamics of what this person sinned, and then how he got his rectification. Now, what did it say? He says, he tells the story. He asked him, well, what's going on? What's with that mark on your face? So he says to him, the mark happened because I was there with my sister. We had some wine. Wine loosened us up. And then I was unifying with her. That's what he says. He doesn't say like I sinned with her. He said, he didn't say I cohabited with her. He says I was achidna. I held on. I unified. So he's saying something very interesting. He's saying the word achidna, I unified, because it seems like this person wasn't just a plain simple lowlife who was just sinning. This person had a spiritual intention in his sin. He thought that he's actually doing something positive. He thought that his unification with his sister is actually a very high spiritual level. Now, does that mean that that was his motivation, or that's like on some subconscious high level that's, we don't always realize sometimes even the negative things we do are triggered by spiritual forces. And sometimes it's just a misuse of the spiritual energy that we could be making a mistake. And there's not every sin is beginning with our animalistic side. Sometimes it could begin with our godly soul at a higher level, but it's making a spiritual mistake. As we're going to see over here. Now, in order for him to be able to misdiagnose and to be, in other words, as we're going to see, he's going to explain that cohabiting with one's sister, which is pure incest, the Torah uses, it's in this week's Torah portion, the Torah uses very interesting language. The Torah says if a person will sleep with his sister, chesedhu, he's doing a kindness. That's a kindness. Now, kindness is a good thing. Usually kindness in the Torah is used as positive. So what does it say? So Rashi explains the reason it's using such a positive word for such a sin is because there was once a time that this was the right thing to do. Where the whole world, we're all children, we're all descendants of a relationship of brother and sister. Cain and Abel, which are the first generation after Adam and Eve, who did they marry? There was no one else to marry but their sisters. And from their unions or chase, the only people were their own sisters. And that's who they married. But it was a kindness because, or else we couldn't populate the world. It was necessary. That's why it says chesed. But he's going to bring over here that they're actually, on a deeper Cabalistic level, there is a very, very, very high supernal level where there is cohabitation with brother and sister. In the deepest spiritual divine realms, the Sfirot are called brother and sister, and did we say Yesod and Malchus or Ze'er Anpin and Malchus? They are intimate with each other. They're married, but Yesod and Malchus are brother and sister. They're both children of Chachmei Bina. Oh, so it's the godliest thing. So it says that, and that's why the Torah says Chesed. It's a kindness because it is a very powerful spiritual energy. So why does the Torah prohibit it? The answer is that because a brother and a sister have such a closeness to each other, when you take these two energies of male and female and you connect them, the energy is super, super intense. And because it's super intense, the worlds cannot handle it. And what happens is it crashes and it becomes a horrific perversion of energy. And it does enormous damage in the cosmos. Why? Because the worlds can't handle such intense light. So therefore, in the supernal world of Atzilus, which is still divine, which is infinite, over there are the vessels that can handle such a union. So over there, it's the highest positivity. It's the greatest mitzvah, so to speak. But as you try to translate that into a lower world, it becomes a real no-no. It becomes a very, very damaging thing. This guy, I don't know if he was conscious of it and said, "Oh, I'm going to sleep with my sister," and he started meditating on all this Kabbalah. I'm not sure. I personally think it's probably not what happened. His passions got stoked and he did what he did. But he's explaining over here on some subconscious level the reason he felt that that's why he felt he's unifying. He's unifying. He thought he's unifying the cosmos like it is in Atzilus, and to bring a unification between the Sefirot. He thought he's unifying. Why? Because he drank wine. And the wine that he drank caused him to make a fatal mistake. He's going to explain the idea of the wine. It started with drinking too much wine. You got to watch your alcohol. Not good in a hotel, especially when you're with someone that might be which could create a sexual temptation. No wine, no alcohol. Don't hit the bar when you don't want to sin. And the cause of it was yayin, was wine. We drank wine. Who? Now he says this wine. Simply, it was they went to the bar and they had some alcohol. They had some wine, whatever it was. He says it was wine, but we have to look deeper. This wine was the wine that was the corrupted wine. According to one of the opinions, when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, according to one of the opinions, it was a vineyard. And they drank, the tree of knowledge was alcohol. And it corrupted them. And it says, remember, this is a famous teaching, that had they waited till Friday night, they sinned immediately after they were created on Friday. Had they waited till Friday night, which is already Shabbos, he would have made kiddush on the wine, and then the wine would have been elevated to a much higher level, and it would not have had a corrupting element. Quite on the contrary, it would take him to a very high place. But he jumped the gun. Him and her, they took it. They were enticed by the alcohol early. They drank from it. So this fellow, when he's drinking from the wine, he was tapping that sinful wine. We know that together when they sinned, the evil inclination went in and so on. And Eitz Hadas means, the tree of knowledge, means it corrupts one's knowledge. That one can have knowledge, but you get a perverted knowledge, which means you can use knowledge itself in a perverted way. Like if someone takes the concept, a brother and sister union is a very high thing. Let's tap into that. No, don't do that, because the Torah says not to. Just follow the instructions. And you say, well, according to Kabbalah, it's a high thing. Yeah, that's a corrupted knowledge. So that's what he says. And he drank the Eitz Hadas, Eshkel Shel Anavim, which was a cluster of grapes, Hepech the Yayin HaMeshumar, which was opposite of the. There is a holy wine, and that's called the guarded wine. So we know when it comes to wine, particularly, we have to be very careful that it's not be touched by, there's a lot of strict guidelines when it comes to kosher wine, more than anything else. Because wine has to be guarded. The wine, it says, in that there is it says when Mashiach will come, God will give us to drink alcohol. Miyayin hameshumar banavav, wine that is still in the grapes from the 6 days of creation. It's been maturing and maturing. It's been hidden in the grape. That means there's a certain level of wine where the wine is very, very high. But this wine, which was from the Eitz Hadas, which was not guarded, the Bina, should have been guarded, but they had a corrupting element, which was the wine. And this led him to have an incestuous relationship, but particularly with who? With his sister. So he's going to explain why the wine, because with a sister in particularly, is when you can use a perverted logic based on a holy logic, but it's unholy if it gets perverted, that it is a positive thing. So Vemizin, as he explains over here, with who did he cohabit? With his sister. That was with him. They'll say, well, she was the girl that was with him. But no. The Eitz Hadas, because the wine of the Eitz Hadas caused him, it corrupted his das, that he made the mistake. It says, if a person marries his sister, it's a kindness. Chesadu vadai. The Zohar says definitely a kindness. Parshas Achrei sham daf ayin zayin samach l'seif amid aleph. The Zohar says uba amid beis sham ayin sham. The Zohar says that this is v'tah b'zeh you made a mistake. Ki zehoya. The Zohar says when is it a chesed? The Zohar says bikadmeisa, in the early days, bestima da alma, in the concealed worlds. That's what the words of the Zohar is when it speaks about how with a sister, a cohabitation with a sister, with a sibling, with a sister, is a kindness. So the Zohar says, on a very high level in the early time. The Zohar says these words, Avol mikan v'lohala, but from hence and onward, b'nei nasha d'yishtachken bei, people who do this sin, the nichrisu le'enei b'nei am, get cut off, they cause an excision in their soul, become completely, their souls get amputated. It's terrible. It's because it gets punishment with a very severe punishment. It's not a way to connect the cosmic energy. It's a way to cause a terrible severance. So now he says in the parentheses, he explains, Upirsh, Hai bekad mesa. What does it mean in the early days? Hainu ad matan Torah. It means until the Torah was given. That means from creation until the Torah was given, until Sinai, then it was okay. You were permitted to marry a sister. Who married their sister? Well, we see Cain and Abel married their sister. According to some opinions, the tribes, the children of Jacob, married their sisters. Now, Jacob himself, even though he didn't marry his sister, he married two sisters, which is forbidden. According to the laws after Sinai, you're not allowed to marry two sisters. But Jacob did. So you see, the rules were different before the Torah was given, right? So that means Bikad Mesa in the early days. Then it says Bistima the Alma, in the concealed world. What does that mean? Hainu Gam Ata. But now as well, meaning even post Matan Torah, even post the giving of the Torah, post Sinai. Yashkach, it exists. Mutter, it's permitted where El Shazeh Bestima da Alma, in a high spiritual level. Hainu Ba'atzilus, in the worlds of Atzilus, in the world of emanation. Shashama Yechudim, there all the marriages, all the unifications between the attributes, Hu Ba'aroya Istafka, are all incestuous. They're all with, for example, there is a relationship over there with father and daughter. When Chachma delivers energy to Malchus, has an intimacy with Malchus, father and daughter. That's the most forbidden thing. And there's mother and son. It's terrible, but it's not, because on that mystical, sublime, godly level, this, and there's also brother and sister. Achim achaisi, brother and sister. Kamashakasav, like it says, Pischi li achaisi. The man says to the woman, "Open up for me, my sister." Simply means open up the door, but it also means allow me to be intimate with you. Libaftani achaisi kala, my sister, my bride, you've captured my heart, which means there's a romance going on between brother and sister. Basi legani, or it says, he's bringing a whole bunch of verses in Song of Songs, where the bride is, he keeps on referring to the bride, not just as his beloved, but also as his sister. Basi legani, I've come to my garden, which is my marital place. Achaisi kala, my sister, my bride. Ukedaima. Because that's all depicting the unions in the sublime realms of divinity, of the divine. Mashenkin bibiyah, which is not the case in the three lower worlds. Who asr, it's forbidden. Not only is it forbidden, it brings the biggest punishment. It brings the capital punishment. Kares, not capital punishment. For this, it's not punishable by the court, but it's punishable by excision. And that's the reason why a forbidden relationship in the Torah, cohabitation with someone you're not allowed to, is called Gilui Aroyos, revealing Aroyos. Aroyos is nakedness, but it's all called revealing. What does that mean? Gilui Davka. That means like this: in the mystical hidden worlds, it's not a problem. In the outside revealed worlds, that's where it's forbidden. Kirak bestima da alma ba'atzilos. In the hidden world of Atzilos, efsher zeh, it's permitted. V'ayin besidur b'drisha birchas hamazon be'inyan gili aroyos ayin sham. Over there he explains it in the Alter Rebbe Siddur. In the discourse regarding benching, we once learned that. Ula yesh lefarish oid. Now he gives another interpretation. And when he said, the Zohar says that it's a chesed, it's a kindness, the Zohar gives two expressions. It's a kindness bekadmesa in the beginning, and it also says it's a kindness bestima da alma in the concealed world. So his first interpretation was in the beginning means in the early days, even in this world, in the early years before the Torah was given. Bestima da alma means in the higher realms. Now he's going to give another interpretation. Bekadmesa, when it says in the beginning, is also referring to not early times before the giving of the Torah, but it's referring to two levels in the evolution of worlds. Bekadmesu ba'olamis ein soif shalifnei Atzilus. In the infinite worlds that are even above Atzilus, that's called kadmesa, like the word Adom Kadmon. That means in the realms above Atzilus, for sure it's permitted these unions. And the stima da alma, the concealed worlds, is referring to the second stage of worlds, which is Atzilus, which even though it's much lower, it's still enough godly that it can handle the energies of these unions between brother and sister. Hi, bestima da alma ba'olam Atzilus is the world of Atzilus. But in the three lower worlds of creation, in Biyah, that's when it's forbidden. From here and onward, Asr zeh, it's forbidden, ubekares, and it's with excision. Ayin Parshas b'shalach afkuf nam tes, that can cost a person his life. Tlas alman b'ramasham. Okay. Upagama barnash, but this guy, because he drank wine, so the wine, which was in a sense, it was in a sense like a non-kosher wine in a sense. That messed with his das and made him think that he is going to actually activate this high union. When he sinned with his sister, now what he basically is going to point out all the points in this individual where this person became blemished. So, number one, he is the man. The sin is a sexual sin, so it's obviously causing a blemish in his sexuality, which is in the yesod element of his body, but also the yesod element of his soul. His soul becomes blemished in his foundation, in his bonding quality of his soul. That's where the blemish definitely happened. But yesod the tchura, in his male element of yesod, he became blemished. Now, he also blemished the woman he was with, his sister. Now she, because she's representing the female in general is malchut. is the Shekhinah energy. Also, brother, sister is Ze'er Anpin and Malchus. So he's definitely blemishing the Malchut element. That's it. V'gam pagam b'Malchus. He also blemished in Malchus. Shubchenas Achoisi, which is his sister. Kamosha Kasav, as it says, Achois lanu. Malchus is called a sister. It says, say to wisdom, you are my sister. And which wisdom are we talking about? The lower wisdom, which is Malchus. Malchus is also called wisdom. Chachma ze'ira the Malchus. The small Chachma, which is called the wisdom of creation. Chachma Shlomo, which is called the wisdom of King Solomon, which is the lower level of Chachma, which is the level of Malchus. That's where, and that's called sister. So he definitely blemished in Malchut and in Ze'erat. However, his blemish went much higher as well. Hine pagam gam bedas. He also caused a blemish in his dat on a much higher level. Why? You would think it's sexual. It's in the lower element of the person. How is he getting up to his das? Das is, I understand that when you're studying or researching or taking in impure teachings or ideas or when someone is serving is corrupting their intelligence by having a corrupt mind. But it's not a corruption of the mind, it's a corruption of a relationship. No, but he's corrupting the das. Why? Das. Union between male and female is always called das. It involves the das. Why? It says when Adam had relations with Eve, the Torah doesn't say they had sexual relations. The Torah says man knew his wife. V'adam yada es Chava. Man knew his wife. You see, the yesod is the physical and spiritual connection. But before you can even have that bonding, you first need to feel attached to the person. And that's what das does. Das is to be able to focus on something until you mentally attach yourself. Yesod is more of an emotional attachment, but first there has to be a mental attachment. You can't have a sexual bond with anybody without mental focus. That's why when a person is distracted, they lose their excitement. They lose their right. You need to have das. That's one of the reasons why, I'm just going to give you one of the reasons why, according to Torah, according to the Torah law, it needs to be dark in the room. It needs to be quiet. It needs to be so dark you don't see anything. If one candle is on, not good. Okay, one can use it before to create a mood, but the actual intimacy itself and bonding has to be dark. And one of the reasons is because there's not allowed to be any distraction, so that the two of them should bond completely with each other. So das is the seed. We know that das and yesod are related to each other. They're both in the center. And more than that, the sages use the term ein kushi ela ladas. It's a very interesting law. It says that a woman, if she's raped, she's not held accountable in Torah for that forbidden relationship. It's not unlike in the Muslim world where there are honor killings, where women are killed just because they were raped. She didn't do anything. Not only was she abused, now you're going to be abused. She's the shame of the family. It's ridiculous, insane. Torah says that when a woman who was forced to have a sexual thing, she's exempt. How about a man? If someone holds a gun to someone and he says, sleep with this woman, or else I'll blow your brains out. Is that considered against his will? So you can't punish someone. Again, I know in a case where a gun was against them, but It says, but if someone forces a man onto someone, let's say literally they force a man onto a girl, can you say the man kind of was, or even if a woman, for example, forces a man to have relations with her? In other words, can a man be raped? That's really the deeper question. So, according to Torah, no. And the reason is because the man has to, you can't get excited unless you excite yourself. There has to be a das. And therefore, there is that mindfulness. And the person could say, listen here, I'm not, meaning, if then they're not physically excited and they can't have a performance in a sexual encounter because they're not, but it needs das. That's where the concept comes from. Where the Talmud says, Ein kushi, since the man has to get excited, and that cannot happen without das, without willfulness and mental concentration. And so now he's explaining, therefore, every time a person has a non-kosher or commits a sexual sin, it's not only a blemish in their sexual function, which is the yesod, but it's also a blemish in their das. Adam yada, like man knew. The ain kishoy the yesod, there's no excitement of yesod, elol das, only with das. And more than that, the actual seminal drop, right? The semen, it comes from the head. Also, so you're getting your brain involved. Derechut shedra. It goes through the pine, whatever that means, that nerve excitement that produces the. He's not necessarily the semen starts in the head, but what produces the semen, what produces that whole process, begins in the mind and travels through the spine, and imshach b'moach hadas, which we know that the spine particularly comes from the das, chachma bina in the front, das is in the back, and that's where the spinal cord comes from. Umagam baznusim achoisa. Now this is in any type of sexual sin. In this case, when he had a sin with his sister, there is a particular connection to das. Brother and sister means they come from the same father and mother. The singular point that unifies male energy and female energy is das. Because it's explained in Kabbalah that das is the place where the mental energy splits and becomes male energy, female energy, chesed and gevura. Where is the energy first unified? In das, and in das it splits. We see that in the tefillin. The tefillin are 4 compartments which represent chesed, gevura, teferes. I'm sorry, chachma, bina, das. But then why is it 4? It should be only 3 compartments. So it's explained that das splinters into chesed and gevura, which is das is what produces the emotion of love and the emotion of fear. I'm not going to get into it right now. Now, love and kindness is male, and strength and discipline is female, or strength and fear. The place where they're both coming from is das. So das has brother and sister together. Now, yeah, it's together. But when you bring together brother and sister when brother and sister live and they help each other out and they're there for each other in comforting each other and assisting each other in every way, giving each other a ride to the airport and cooking dinner for each other when they need, and just being an ear for your sister or for your brother when they need you, wonderful. That's a very, very positive manifestation of this das, a good use of this das, and that's the way God wants it. But when brother and sister get intimate with each other, which is the way God does not want us to unify these two energies, so that blemish happens in the das. That's what he's saying. So every sexual perversion is a blemish in the das, particularly when it's brother and sister. As he explains over here, it's from the two crowns that are in das, of chesed and gevura. The crown of chesed and the crown of gevura is in das, called train itrin, the two crowns. Ha'achat chura, the brother, is the male. Ma'atara the chesed is from the crown of chesed. El sheyesh by gam kein itra de gevura, he has some element of gevura. Ki at chura date shalom, because the male has a complete das. So he has a das of kindness and a das of gevura. Sheyesh by atara de gevura gam kein, okay, fine. V'achoy sanukva, but the woman, her das is called kal, is a light das, because she only has a das of gevura and not chesed, for whatever, however that works. Matara de gevura. Imkain comes out. But mashazina emachoisa, this that he had znus, he had an improper relations with his sister, pagam bedaitoi, he particularly blemished his das. For who? And what caused him to do this? Shoya shikar mahayayin de etzadas. Because he drank from the wine, from the tree of das. That was we said before, from the tree of knowledge. That's what started the corruption in his das. He made a mistake. He thought the opposite. He thought by him being with his sister, he's doing this intense unity between the two itrin, between the two crowns of chesed and gevura, male and female in the das. This is positive. But that's because he lost his mind. He was intoxicated. And that's why it's interesting. He uses the term, I told you, he doesn't say, I slept with her. He says, I held on to her. Achidna, I held on to my sister all night long. Achidna ba'achsi, I became unified with my sister. Achidna dafka. Sha'asa oisam echad, he felt that he made them one. Achidna Gematria. And then he takes it so far. He says the word achidna is echad is 13, plus 10 is 23, plus 1 is 24, plus aleph is 24. Plus 50 is 74. It's the exact gematria of the word da, which da is das. So he thought achidna. I'm actually doing a das, a holy das. And that's the reason why it happened in this hotel. He's going to give another reason in Movachan is bar le'el. In addition to this that we said before, shechadu shpiza roim is al yesod, that this one hotel, Chadush Piza, is the same numeric value as, what did we learn earlier? Chadush Piza is 317, which is the same numeric value as the word Zayas, which Zayas is Yesod. Remember we said earlier, it also is a symbolization of Das. And he doesn't explain why. Okay. In truth, it's not so. The guy made a mistake. As we said, from when the Torah was given, Asar Zed's forbidden. And on the contrary, Biznusai, through his promiscuous or forbidden relationship, Garami caused not a unification between these two energies, but a division amongst them. Garam piru de machloikes. He caused separation and fighting. That's why when he came down for breakfast at the lobby, boom, what does he encounter? Two people are at each other. They're a fight is going on, and a fist fight break, whatever was going on. Beina itrin chesed de gevura de das. He causes an explosion. He causes a big a defect in these two itrin, these two crowns of chesed and gevura of das. Like we said earlier, when an energy is not able to be facilitated, it corrupts. It does the opposite, and that's why the word das also means to break. Das means to unify, to attach. to become mentally one with something, but das also means to break. Because if you're using the das in the wrong way, instead of unification, it brings to a shattering. It's from the word shvira. Like it says, Vayedabam es anshe sukkos, that the people of Sukkos, they smashed them, they broke them. It's talking about a war. It says they decimated them. Uksiv, and it says, Laman das kalam haaretz, in order that all the nations of the world should das. One of the meanings is they should know, but one of the reasons is that the evil amongst the nations should be broken. And this is the reason why this person's improper relationship by night garam caused shebeboiker, that in the morning his kaite to a shpizer shaloi bechad gavra. That's why this fight was taking place in the lobby. It's the opposite of holiness. By holiness, it says that when a person does holy things at night, then that holy energy that they produced at night has tremendous positive impact by day. They just say that when you learn Torah by night, there is a thread of kindness, of love, that is drawn upon the person by day, and that this energy causes a lot of loving kindness in the world. Shekasav Yoimam Yitzava Hashem Chastoi, by day God commands His kindness. Ubalayla, and by night Shira Imi, sing with me. So the sages say, Shal Yadaisha Balayla Shira Imi. If a person studies Torah at night, you sing with God. Sha'asik b'Torah Balayla. A person studies Torah at night. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moishech Alav Chut Shel Chesed B'Yom. God extends a thread of kindness by day. So you see that a holy activity by night can influence a lot of positivity by day. And there's another verse. It says, Hashem Elokai Yeshuasi, Yoim. God, my God, you are my help by day. And it says before that, Balayla tza'akti negdecha. By night I cry out to you. Shal yadesha tza'akti balayla negdecha. Through prayer at night, then you deliver your salvation by day. The opposite. When a person misbehaves by night, through this, that this person had a promiscuous relationship by night, and he thought he's combining and unifying the world. He caused the opposite. By day, a fight, between his ushpizen is between the hotel manager or the hotel owner and this person that was there in the lobby that were fighting. So this it created this negative energy. So we got to be careful. We don't even know what our energies produce. And that's the reason why he got involved. Because at night he was trying to unify. That was his thing. Again, I know conscious, subconscious, but whatever it was an attempt to not follow the instructions of the Torah and to bring some kind of a unification. And he was the really cause for this thing. So he right away decided to be the peacemaker over here. But what happened? Not only didn't he make peace, they beat him up really well. He got involved with them. He entered amongst them. He wanted to get involved. He wanted to make peace with them. But it turned out the opposite. Not only didn't he make peace, but they had to call the police. So this guy beat him from one side. And the reason they hit him in the head, because he tried to unify the two elements of the das, and that's why this guy hit him, who's represented one side of the das, and the other one represented the other side of the das, which he and they beat him in the head. And that's why he had this injury. That's why he got this mark. In the das, it registered. Shaloi. This was his punishment because he defected the das in these two itrin which are related to brother and sister. That's why they beat him and hit him on both sides of his head. And this mark, even though das is behind the face, behind the head, it was seen on his face. Ki das asid ba'ampin, because das testifies in a person's face. I don't know where it seems to be a phrase of the Zohar. I could have maybe searched it by doing a Google search, an AI search. I don't know, but something like this it says. Therefore, when he blemished the das, there was a sign in his face. Like it says, hakaras panim ansabam. Their face, by recognizing their face, you can see it. Ants was conveyed it. Thank God Reb Samloyi was there and he administered first aid because he was the Yesod element. And he came and he began the rectification. But what the Rebbe's father is going to explain, this, which I'm going to stop over here, is that Reb Samloyi was only able to do the damage in the level where Reb Samloyi is at. Since Reb Samloyi is the energy of Yesod, so he was a Tzadik that can repair, he helped him repair his Yesod. He helped him repair his Yesod and also the blemish in his sister, which is Malchut. But Reb Samloyi was not able to reach in the Das to fix it over there. And that's the reason why this person still did not complete his tshuva. And that's why he still walked around with this mark even after he did the tshuva. Reb Samloyi taught him how to do tshuva and he cried and he did. But he did not rectify. The sin had a higher level damage, and over there he couldn't rectify. Until he meets Reb Abba. And Reb Abba is from Bina, and Bina is higher than Das. And Bina can do that higher rectification. But over here, we're going to leave it for the rest of the story. You'll come back for the rest of the story, Be'ezrat Hashem, next week. One of the nights, we got to finish this incredible teaching over here. So, 3.5 hours, that was a nice marathon. We are going to stop over here. And may everybody have all the rectifications that you need. And we know how meaningful everything in our life is, even when things seem to be just this, that, but everything is a deeper, godly story.